This workshop's called the Alternative Living Immersion. We've done a few of these workshops on alternative living and regenerative living and all these fun buzzwords. But really the last few months have been traveling with people in Costa Rica, specifically looking at all of this stuff, living in an eco village, creating a neighborhood or an eco village, buying land, how to be sustainable in doing so and not just invaders from a foreign land. And yeah, a lot of other subject matters that we'll hit, but mostly there's some really practical steps that people have asked about. So I want to make sure not to stay in the airy-fairy and also cover the reality of, okay, if I want to do this, what are some of my first steps? So welcome to the Alternative Living Immersion. Should you have friends or anyone who couldn't be here and wants to or wanted to, once you get the replay link, you're welcome to share it. It'll also be up on our website. And thank you for everyone who contributed financially to this. All of the proceeds go to the Children's Eternal Rainforest and the donations. It's a cause I really believe in here. And one really awesome land steward, Tom Newmark, and his team who are preserving an incredible part of Costa Rica's rainforest. So they need it as much as ever. So let's dive into it. See how this works. So I had this background that I usually share that talks about my bio, but I'm gonna give you the real bio that's not on my website, including all the stuff that didn't go well. So yes, my passion is working in this space of social impact and alternative living. And I've worked on it from the sense of hospitality, creating a retreat center and consulting a bunch, also to emergent communities, and also just helping friends move abroad, mostly to Costa Rica, but I've also worked in Mexico, Portugal, parts of the US and other parts of the world. A lot of places that people are looking at now. I know it's pretty easy to just hop ship to Costa Rica, but a lot of people just want to leave their cities and go into nature. So some friends have asked, even in the US, New York, Montana, other places. So I don't want us to just think it's about going international. Many of you have asked about that, but for the ones who are looking not far from home, that's super cool too. I moved to Costa Rica about 15 years ago. I was in the nightlife industry in the US, throwing parties at nightclubs, basically. Always loved community and gathering people, but that was a different form of doing it. I was a little bit less conscious, and started to go to Burning Man, started to go on some retreats, and started that spiritual journey and reading a lot of books and learning more about myself. Yeah, and my father and my family also had a big shift. My dad left his company, his health was in ruins, and decided to turn to organic food and holistic medicine and really clean up his life and body. More from the medical side. For me, it was more from the spiritual side, and also to create experiences. I loved hosting big events, and then I found myself hosting smaller retreats with healers and teachers, and just seeing people grow while I was also growing. That was some crazy stuff, because we came here with a good purpose to Costa Rica as a family to buy land and create a wellness and longevity center and create a community around wellness and a healing space. But it also had a lot of economic interest. We had poured all our money into it, so we had to make money back, and money became a really difficult thing for us, because it meant selling lots later when we had an eco village on the books, meaning we had bought a property and we had invested money into it. And that didn't go as I planned. So I'll share a bit about that. And whenever I worked with hotels or developers, which usually were my friends, there was a lot of that learning that spilled into that. A lot of the mistakes that I made that I didn't want other people to make. When we bought land, I think in 2007 or 8, the real estate crisis happened in the US and globally, we had put down deposits for properties, but then my family and I had to figure out ways to pay the bank because eventually mortgage payments were due. Some came to what they call balloon, where we had to pay a lot of money. And I was super young. I just wanted to build an eco village and save the world. Didn't really think about saving myself. I was just going and giving talks at Envision Festival and Burning Man on community and the structure of belonging and all of that. And a lot of it was true and a lot of it was important, but really the angle that I was coming at was also to save my project, to, yeah, to find a way that we could build this, but also live and earn a living, which was really hard. I met a lot of people who started projects where money wasn't an issue. They were very well capitalized, either themselves or as a group or through a foundation. And when that's the case, you could really come from a beautiful place and come from purpose. When it's not, and even talking to my buddy Stephen Brooks, who has a beautiful eco village, he said, the next one, I want to have less investors and not have to pay them as much and sell everything at the highest price per square foot. I want to have more land to regenerate and to preserve. And so this question of capital and investors and all of this stuff comes up a lot. Even in personal projects, I've had friends who bought land just for their family, but realized, man, to build what I want to build plus buy the land takes a careful understanding of the economics and how that works and what you're going to do once you're here. Even if it's not to earn money, it's to work and to feel on purpose and to do what you do. There's a balance of the economics and the reality that I think I see a lot of people really grappling with right now. So it's the first time, I think, in 15 years where the projects that I'm doing don't have an economic stress or pressure. Whether they work or not, whether they succeed or not, I don't have to change my purpose or my values. I can proceed with what I know is true. And it's really, really, really uncomfortable. In some cases, it's really comforting in others. But recently launched a company called Live the Possibility and a project called Nucleo, to help people do this, to help people find land, develop it the right way with sustainable building practices, put a tiny house on it. And with Nucleo, we realized there was something huge that was missing. People come to Costa Rica and other countries and sometimes feel that they have to buy land right away. And they don't have a chance to really experience the country. They don't have a chance to experience different places. And yeah, you can get an Airbnb for 2-3 nights at an exorbitant price, but there wasn't really something to allow people to experience a month, let's say in Nosara, Costa Rica, or a month in Todos Santos. You can rent a home, but it's, again, not ideal sometimes, and it's not set up for that experience. So instead of rushing to build more eco villages and communities and this and that, decided to focus the energy on, one, helping people and consulting them and advising them, and two, to create these hubs where people could stay for multiple months, multiple weeks, and really feel different parts of the country out and understand if it's for them before they make a big decision. So yeah, that kind of takes the bio to where we are now. This is, I tried to add more photos this time, but last week we went to visit Alegria Eco Village, which some of you know from our dear friend Stephen Brooks. And yeah, essentially it was really awesome because I was with this group called Leap Forward, and they do a lot of interpersonal work in community, how people relate to each other. I couldn't believe that I had met them this late in the game. I had met Ronit, the founder, in Hatch, social impact event and conference. And yeah, just understanding that people have to get the people thing right and clear the schmutz before we could live in community and all of that. It's really tough. At Stephen's first community, Ecovia, I went to one of the HOA meetings of the people who live there. And man, it was scary. I almost didn't want to create a community ever again, because people were bringing up topics that I didn't know who was right, who was wrong, and how to find a good answer. It was questions like, oh, do we put money into building a fence around the community because somebody's kids were kind of getting out of the compound and there was a public road? And a gentleman from Canada was like, oh, I didn't come here to live in a prison. And so here you had two issues, like one guy who doesn't want to live in prison around with a brick wall, which I totally understood, and another woman who didn't want her kids to feel unsafe running into the streets, which I totally understood too. So getting the people part right is really, really, really tough. So I was really grateful to do this tour with Leap Forward. Also super, super grateful for their honesty. I just call everyone the best. This is my friend. They're doing the best project. They have the best this, the best that. And, you know, they brought up some tough questions like, hey, how is this different from a gated community in Florida with permaculture? And Stephen answered a lot of those questions. But yeah, there's tough things. And to just come and recreate more of the same with great gardening and sustainable practices doesn't really do it. Obviously at Alegria and his project, he's doing a lot more. But I'm seeing new things emerge that I question, are they the same just with the green wrapper or not? So we had a good walk around the Eco Village. You could see the dome and the gardens there. And yeah, so we'll talk a little bit today about developing a vision, a clear vision. So even if it's building a single house, I just met with a couple who were looking just to buy a plot of land for themselves to build a home and a rental unit or two. But after conversing with them, it wasn't clear whether they were going to live there full time, whether they were going to travel and wanted to rent it, what they wanted out of this part of their life and this space, and if they even wanted to be in Nosara. And my partner Ika said, what do you guys want? Do you have a clear vision? And it was so interesting to see the husband and wife start to say slightly different things, and then a little bit of a backpedal, like, oh, maybe we should talk to each other first. So even if it's not a big project, obviously if you're developing a retreat center, a healing center, a community, even more reason to have a vision and hone in on that vision. But even for individuals, I think it's so important to know what you want and what you want out of any alternative to what you're in now. And even knowing if now is something that needs to change right away or in a month or in a year, being really honest on time. Another topic we'll talk about, I call regenerative hogwash, which we kind of talked about now just before, which is, you know, I had, I think, used probably the word regenerative living thousands of times in my social media, not really realizing what was so regenerative about it and how we could really regenerate this planet. So I'm not saying everything with the word regenerative is bad, but just saying really honoring that. One of my mentors and advisors said, Ed, it's really hard to call all projects like this regenerative. I mean, to live up to a regenerative standard it's huge. It's not just being sustainable, it's beyond that. So just really looking without green blinders and without just finding ways to do things better than. I'd met with a developer who used to do projects in the States, and he said, well, this is going to be way better than that. But I'm like, bro, you could do even beyond what you're saying. This is just a little bit better because you have public spaces for the community, cool, and you know you have this center that anyone can access. But is it better than, or is it the best we can do? And again, it's like, well, for the financial kind of setup, this is the best we can do. So it always, a lot of times, comes back to the financials, and I don't think that that should be something that limits us. Obviously, money is money, it's not unlimited, but being humble, doing things within our means, not building mega projects. I've talked countless people out of building retreat centers and communities and starting something smaller. Start a micro community, start a pod, start a tiny retreat center. I had to build 100 retreat centers in 5 years for a company, and thankfully we stopped a year in. But I was like, man, you can't do this at that scale. You really can't. And so scaling the new paradigm, scaling some of these future solutions isn't exactly necessary. Let's let someone else in here. So yeah, so I really think looking at what we can do and how we can do it better and to our best, really to a standard that we feel an integrity in and that we could stand by our word. And I'll be the first to say that I haven't always done that. So now really holding myself to that. Land stewardship, we'll talk about a bit when you buy a piece of land in another country that used to belong to somebody else from that country, whether indigenous, local, whatever word we want to use. It's a big responsibility. It's really cool to say like, oh, all these people are coming to Costa Rica and Mexico and they're going to take care of the land. Why? Because the local people couldn't. So I'm not saying you can't buy land, but when you buy land, understand that you're a steward of that land, whether it's a tiny plot or an entire eco village. It's a responsibility. It's a huge responsibility in how you relate to local people, how you relate to local flora and fauna, bringing your cat, bringing this, adopting 3 dogs. You just changed a huge situation on that land, which may be great, you know. We love dogs, we love cats. But then when I saw what happens with cats in eco villages, you know, as soon as, I think the word is feral cats, as soon as they make babies, cats have rained terror on eco villages. And it's a joke, but it's really not. If you ask Norman Brooks, Stephen Brooks's dad, I saw at a festival, somebody raised their hand and said, what's the biggest challenge in your eco village? And he said, pets, not people, pets. Because it creates, I had a friend move out of an eco village and sell a $500,000 home that he built for him and his wife to have kids and have this beautiful life, because he kept getting fines because his dog was running into other people's yards and this and that. He was like, I'm done with this eco village stuff. So yeah, it's definitely an issue, and it's one that can be dealt with, but with good communication and rules and understanding. And yeah, sustainable building, there's a lot of really cool solutions. It's not that you have to use a compost toilet starting tomorrow, but there's really good materials out there, hempcrete and other things that we'll talk about, that you could build to any level of luxury and still be sustainable. There's also, in terms of local materials and other things, super important aspects to this. And yeah, I think it's something that we talk about, but oftentimes certain things get brushed under the rug. So we'll look into the realities of sustainable building. We'll talk about finding land. It kind of starts with that for many people, and it's this search all around to find the right piece of land. And also what that means, how to understand if it's buildable, how to do maybe not a full study, they call it like sustainability and impact studies, but starting just to understand what's on the land, what kind of land it is, who it belonged to, who the neighbors are, how the soil is. I mean, everything from practical building stuff to important things that go beyond the practical. Building the right team, which should even go earlier, but yeah, I find a lot of people want to do it on their own, and there's support for free, there's support for pay, and a lot of it is not that expensive, but having the right lawyer, the right consultant, we talk about it below, all of the permitting and things that have to be done for a home to an eco village. I always recommend people have a good lawyer on the ground, a good accountant, to set things up the right way, whether you buy it in a trust or a company, whether it's a nonprofit or for-profit, and even just for your own home. At least in Costa Rica, you should never really buy land in your own name. It should always be done through a company, almost always, for specific reasons that we'll get into. And I have a great team of people that I really love because they help me not make mistakes that later get stressful. Residency and other things in the process. And it starts from the very beginning. A lot of lawyers won't charge you for that early free advice in Costa Rica because they know that if you're going to file a paper later or a residency or a land purchase, you'll work with them. So people don't even know that they can get free advice from really educated locals or foreigners, depending on who your team is comprised of. So building the right team is super, super critical. Permitting and all of the logistics stuff we'll also get into. understanding the realities of time. Everyone's like, oh, I'll get this water permit in a month. You won't, it'll take 3. So as much as you can have land or access to things like water, electricity, internet, that you don't have to have a question mark of when it will arrive. Man, how many times I've heard friends saying, I just got a great deal on a property. And I'm like, is there water? And they're like, yeah, they said in a month they're going to bring the pipe to my land. And I'm like, okay, so you don't have water. And is there natural water on the site? And how are you going to manage that water? Any water reuse considerations, off-grid energy, all of this also plays into permitting from the very beginning. Next topic we'll talk about later is capital and investment, being honest with yourself, what you have to invest, whether you need to take on partners or a loan from a bank or a group. Sometimes it's horrible, sometimes it's incredible. Construction loans help a lot of my friends out. I've also seen people get a little bit tight with their budget and it starts to cause arguments between couples and friends. So being very realistic, and for those here in the group who are looking to start projects like communities and healing centers and such, the investment is such a tricky pickle because you are then bound to those investors. And I've just sat in on 3 meetings with emerging communities of alternative investment structures, which are awesome, which are very different than the classic top-down group of investors that needs to get paid back, like a preferred return or some equity. But again, they're very challenging. We all want to be equal. There's a common pool. You can work and have sweat equity. It's really great on paper, but it gets funny in real life, especially in the community side of things. And yeah, so I think just being honest with that and honest with the situation and not taking on capital or risk that you don't have to. So if you don't need an investor, if you don't need a loan, looking at ways to just be cool about the money stuff so that it doesn't end up becoming an issue later. And it's the one thing nobody wants to talk about. It's like weird to talk about the money schmutz, but it's important, especially within a couple, within a group looking to start a project. It's probably the most important thing to clear up. When there's groups starting a project, there's this whole desire to be super equal and split things accordingly. And there's also the reality that that doesn't happen the way we think, because some people work more, other people contribute less. Some people put in time and energy and sweat equity with vision. Others are physically building and planting the gardens. And even in Burning Man, it felt really weird. Like you'd have all these people who build a Burning Man camp and all these people who are like, all right, we're gonna enjoy it. Roberto, you did a good, I like the posture there, but that's it. It's, you know, it's the thing that always happens, even in a husband-wife situation. I've seen it where it's like, hey, like I'm busting my butt. And the other one's like, me too, but in a different way. So yeah, just really getting clear on all of that ahead of time and asking for help. Everyone thinks they have to figure it out on their own. The group that I was with, Leap Forward, helps organizations figure out a lot of this stuff for free. And my friend was like, what's up with that? There must be a catch. No, they're pretty good on money, so they do this for free. So really seeing that aspect of asking for some support and asking for advisors and mentors and friends to figure out structures if you're building a community that might be different. So it's something not to be overlooked or thought about in the future. I think it's something to start from the very beginning. And also looking at, we'll talk about some of the innovative components, whether you're looking to live in a project or create a project, but wellness centers, schools, art spaces, all of that is popping up and really cool to have a more holistic way of living, and not necessarily from a wellness perspective, but have the stuff you need. Have a little convenience store, have a healing center, a wellness center, or sauna or pool. Know where your kids are going to go to school, or your friends' kids are going to go to school. Also public spaces for art. I was at a project called Zunia that has the workshop where they cut all the wood and do everything. The guests of the hotel or of the center and future community could actually use that space. So whether it's my girlfriend using it to make a frame for a piece of art or somebody building something, that was really, really rad. That they have an art space and kind of like a shop that you could use. And also it's right next to the volleyball court, which was also rad. I was like, I haven't played volleyball in ages. And so like all of the community that I know in Santa Teresa goes to this Thursday volleyball game. It's a lot of fun. And when you look at some of the Blue Zone studies of people who live over 100, playing games, dominoes, cards, living in some form of community was one of those factors of longevity. And it doesn't mean that you have to live in a tight eco-village community. It could be a simple neighborhood too. I actually find it tough to live in eco-villages for myself, but I really like to be around all my friends. So being in a neighborhood where there's friends living in eco-villages or a cool town, Baja Sur, California, Nosara, Costa Rica, you could live alone in the mountains and in 5 minutes be in community with friends. So really knowing what level of community is appropriate. I thought I really wanted community and to live like in this really cool, sustainable eco kibbutz that my father would talk about. And then I was like, man, I don't want to go to the men's circle, and I'm tired of like people wanting to commune with me this much. I just want to live alone, but not alone. There's this weird dichotomy in myself that I had to figure out. But when we spent 3 months living in a tiny house on the beach in Santa Teresa, that was cool. As much community as I wanted to do, I could pop down and go see everybody. And then when I wanted to be alone and just chill and get my work done and garden, nobody bothered me. And so that's the kind of community that's right for me. Not necessarily everybody, but yeah. And we'll get real. We'll talk about some of the real stuff in a bit. I think actually we're going to start with that. Oh, I put a slide of some cute tiny houses. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of people into this tiny house movement or modular building for time and money and sustainability reasons. So we'll look at what's emerging from how people are living. I've also seen people build really large homes in a sustainable way. So you don't have to live in a tiny house, just be humble, live within your means. If you're hosting 5 groups of friends every week, maybe you need a big house, and that's cool. So we'll talk about the tiny house thing in a little bit. And yep, I was afraid of this. I think I put the getting real slide a little early. So we'll get real. So we talked about the regenerative blah, a lot of labels, a lot of greenwashing, a lot of real stuff too that is regenerative. So not all of it is blah. But there's marketing and then there's reality. And I think when I have seen like these 100-page studies of regenerative analysis of a project, of course there's ecology and tectonic zones and water tables, but regeneration starts with the story of place and the people that are there. So understanding, when I went to visit my buddy and Michael, who is in the Diamante Valley of Costa Rica, very first thing he did was invite all of his local neighbors, the people who work on the property, for a dinner, for this cool potluck dinner. And he continues to do these potlucks because you have to understand what is going on in that place and the story of it. When we went to Nosara last week, it's really hard in certain parts. You see basically the downtown of Nosara, these huge walled multi-million-dollar compounds, and you see like a bunch of workers building these houses with like pretty sad faces. And my friends who came were like, I'm like, you love Nosara? And we saw some cool stuff too. And they're like, no, like, this is kind of sad. This is like literally just chopping up a beach and putting up walls, and there's no integration. You don't have a sense of what was here before. And there are parts of Nosara that I see people building in that are gorgeous, that are maybe a little more removed. But the reality of that story of place, how we relate to the people, understanding what our impact is, even as a person moving into a place, also as an eco-village. Yeah, it creates jobs, but really looking at how you integrate. It's only now that my buddy Steven is like, wow, I really want the guy who built my house, Rufino, to live with me. Sucks that he can't afford to live in the same eco-village. So how do we do that? And he's actually creating that in one of his projects a way that the economic tiering is such that, I'll give you an example. The biggest issue now in some of the hot beach towns, you go to Santa Teresa, you go to Nosara, you go to parts of Mexico, even parts of the US, you have these incredible projects and you have yoga teachers and all these people that are supposed to be there. And yeah, the people who bought land can afford to live there, but the yoga teacher and the school teacher, they have nowhere to live. So people are asking us for tiny houses now and for support in that. And I'm like, why all these tiny houses? And they're like, oh, we need to house our teachers and our gardener. And I'm like, whoa, like this is crazy. It's so expensive in some of these beach towns that one, the people who want to feel them out can't afford to stay for a month. My friend had to stay like half hour out of Nosara because it was too expensive. It was like $6,000 in Santa Teresa for a home rental for a month. It's a lot. And also a lot of the people who we want to integrate into our projects don't have an economic way of living there. So really looking at the place we're in and understanding how, yeah, what our footprint is on it, how we can relate to the people who are there and who were there, maybe even understanding if there's any indigenous culture background, talking to locals, meeting with locals. You know, all of this can be done even if you're buying a house, and they'll tell you some cool stuff. They'll be like, oh, don't live there, or wow, you're living next to so-and-so. So I think starting from that and starting from the story of place and really seeing if you're going to build a project, just putting an eco village in a town doesn't all of a sudden make me or you or anyone else a hero or a retreat center. It can, if it's really needed and integrated. It can also be really intrusive, even when we think we're doing good. So just understanding that, I think, is super important. The next point here is freedom. Freedom. Yeah, I think it's the thing that I wanted the most when I left the US. There's a lot of cops. There's a lot of people telling me this and that. Now, like, you have to be like inside. Canada, I didn't even realize the level of the quarantine there. I spoke to a friend. And so freedom is amazing. Like, as soon as I got to Costa Rica, I felt free and I felt very different. I still wasn't financially free, which was really important part of that freedom, because I still had economic things to consider. And feeling like I had to make a certain amount because my lifestyle was way more, even a lot less than the US, but still more than it had to be. And so a lot of my friends find it hard to make money abroad. But it just depends on what level of freedom you seek and what level you've set for yourself of what you need to build and earn. You know, I want to build my wife this $1 million house. Maybe she doesn't want that. And maybe you guys can do it a little easier, because then that takes away freedom. Then all of a sudden your money's tied up, or you're going to have to work really hard. And man, I can't tell you how many friends I've had who are building projects or like their own house, and they are not free. They are running around like banshees. And they're like, yeah, we're going to operate our own retreat center, or we're going to have a couple unit rental. That's what I do a lot now, these like 4 or 5 unit like micro retreat centers. And I have friends who are like, that's exactly what we want to build, this like cluster, and we want to be nomadic and move to other clusters around the world, and it's our dream. And I'm like, cool. You know how hard it is to operate even like a couple units? You know, my friend has been a hotel operator for 18 years. They sold their hotel on the beach here in Costa Rica. And I stayed in their new project, which is 4 tiny houses with a pool and a little yoga deck. And I'm like, cool, this is a lot easier for them. And I see them running around, the kids to school. One has to go get to the airport because an air condition broke in one of the units. They have to get the chip that was flown in from San Jose. And every day was something new. And I'm like, wow, these people are in handcuffs in their own eco project. And that's what happened to me too. I mean, I had a marriage that didn't work. We were trying to build this dream life and retreat center and eco village. And I was lying to ourselves. I was like, this is going to be great. And we had calluses on our hands and we had groups coming in and out. The more spiritual the group, the more havoc somehow they like left. Oh, can we have the yoga deck reset up? Because we can't really go under the tree right now. And I was gonna lose my shit. You know, my ex was like, all these digital nomads and spiritual people, like, I can't stand them. And I'm like, keep your voice down. These are our clients, you know, but it was the reality. And I could tell you the good sides. I'm also sharing some of the difficulties because I think that's the more important part to share. I've done a few of these workshops when I'm like, woo, go buy land, go build an eco village. But yeah, really knowing what didn't work. And one of the things that doesn't work is taking on more projects than we can handle. Like right now, like I have a friend who's, I'm like, what are you doing next? And it's like, nothing. It's like, I'm just chilling for a bit. I want to let everything settle in. I want to feel what I want to do next. And I'm like, wow, I never did that. I would always go from one thing to the other. If I built a garden in my house, I would start the next project almost with little time to enjoy it. Um, and so, yeah, having that freedom, understanding how your time will be when you're here, because a lot of people spend most of their time building community for other people, building retreat centers. And then we end up having these meetings where it's a couple of us or even a couple expat families, and everyone's like, whew, like we're tired, like we're, we need help, we need to hire somebody. So, find those consultants, advisors, early hires. We're doing a bunch of pre-development advice for a couple building a small center, just so they could avoid these mistakes, and helping them hire the right people, or even knowing who to hire, like a host and a general manager. For a home, understanding that it's okay if you need help, housekeeper, childcare, so you can actually live, like looking at some of these realities, including the next point, which I'll just flow into, is the bureaucracy of living abroad. Man, I didn't know like how long it takes to open a bank account and wait in line, legal papers. You have to send money for something, wires get delayed. So all these things for me took away from freedom. It took me, well, 15 years here. It took me about 10 years, 12 years to realize that I could give an attorney a power of attorney to sign a bunch of documents that I trust he or she can sign well. So I don't have to go wait online. To form a company so I could buy my land in a company, not under my personal name. Work on my residency in Costa Rica, investing 250K, you can have residency as an investor. Investing 60K, just putting it into a bank account, you can have what's called a pensionista or a retirement investment. But setting that up before you start the process, giving lawyers permission to sign paperwork. I had a friend who's like, I offered him my accountant because he's buying land. He's like, why do I need an accountant? I'm like, bro, like you're buying land. You have to open a bank account. You can set this up in ways that you don't pay as much taxes in the US. There's a lot of ways you can set things up to not pay taxes in the US and keep things in a foreign country legally. So yeah, having that support was critical. It created more freedom, and it took away the one downside of living abroad, which was all that bureaucracy and all that stuff. And people say like, what's good about Costa Rica? I could tell them 100 things. No army, great education, amazing people, incredible land and nature. What's tough is a lot of the things that you think are going to go smooth and don't. The time that construction takes. Somebody told you a price, it's really not that price. We're helping a professional builder from the US do his project now, and everything he did took him more time and thus more money. The quality was good, but he's like, Ed, this took me 18 months when it should have taken 6 to build this additional cabin, maybe even 3. And a lot of times people in other countries don't want to disappoint you, and they'll say, yeah, it'll be here tomorrow. The wood will arrive, or this will arrive. And it's not the case. And just preparing yourself for that and relaxing too. Coming from New York City, everything was super fast paced, and expecting other people to be that way. And I remember I lived on one of our properties on the farm for a couple of years, and my best teacher was the guy who basically was the caretaker of the farm. And not everything had to be as rushed. And I also I flipped out because these leaf cutter ants ate like a bunch of my arugula. And he was like, we're just gonna plant more. And I was like, whoa, okay. That's quite interesting attitude, like not going to war with the leaf cutter ants, but planting a little more food, finding other ways to do things. So also there's really cool gifts of getting into the flow of a foreign country. And if you live in a foreign country like I do now, even getting out into nature and getting out a little bit out of the cities, you see things take a different pace. And getting into that pace and getting present, really getting present to that pace is a huge gift. The next point on getting real is language barriers. I know this sounds like a funny one because everyone's like, oh, it's all good. But I had a few relationships that went really tough because I spoke Spanish and my girlfriend didn't. And having partners that don't speak the language, or if you're building a retreat center community, being able to communicate well with your team. I have friends who have been here 8 years and they don't speak Spanish, and that's okay, but it's a huge barrier between you and others, and also within a relationship, potentially between business partners. So if you can learn a local language, or at least try, I think it's super helpful, because later it can get messy if you don't. And it's really fun because then you could joke with people in another language, and you could understand when people are making fun of you in another language, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm the gringo that they're laughing at. And you could laugh with them too, which is dope. But yeah, I think that's an important one. And, there's Duolingo, there's schools. Here, there's a joke, like just start dating someone local and you'll learn the language fast. And that's actually what I did. It's not really that much of a joke. And I learned a lot of cuss words, which was great. Love cussing in other languages. Sometimes spiritual people get offended. They're like, oh, why'd you use the F word? And I'm like, didn't you hear Osho use the F word all the time? Use it all the freaking time. So yeah, it's really fun to have fun with language. I think animals we spoke about in the beginning. Bringing pets is possible to Costa Rica and to other countries. It could be challenging too, depending on where you're living. Like we have 2 dogs and we can travel some places, we can't travel others. People are like, oh, we won't accept you with your 2 dogs in our little cabin. So there's a thing that happens here too. So in Costa Rica, there's a lot of stray dogs. And every time, like when I worked on the retreat center, we'd have hosts or people come in from the US and they're here for a month and they've already adopted a dog. And I'm like, that's cool. And I think people should adopt animals if they're able to. But it also can start being this thing where, like, I know this lady with 8 dogs and she's like the crazy cat lady, but the crazy dog lady. And it comes from a big heart and it comes from wanting to share. And if that's what you can do, awesome. But again, back to the freedom thing, just be mindful of how it might encroach on your freedom. I also had, because I live in nature, like we've had cats that disappear. And I've had partners like, what do you think happened to it? And the caretaker of the property was like, I think a snake ate it. And I'm like, shh, like, take it easy. Maybe it's alive. Like, let's manifest that it's alive. And he's like, no, a snake ate the cat. I'm pretty positive. And it did. And I had to deal with like a lot of tears, and I had tears, and I was like, shit, this is like, it's cool because the animal can run free and live this good life. But like, fuck, like, snake just ate my cat, like bit my cat rather, not ate it. That's a little dramatic. But yeah, it creates stuff and it creates extra things to deal with. And so definitely have a dog or a cat or any other animal, bring an animal if you want, but just think about it in terms of if you're adopting or doing other stuff or living in an eco village, if they accept it, ask them about their animal policy. Like Airbnbs technically have to accept you with an emotional support animal. So I was like, I think I made one of those letters that I need emotional support. And so I would travel with our dogs to Airbnbs and people would get kind of pissed, but it's cool. So just think about the animal thing. Think about autonomy too, driving, access to what you need. Having a car is super critical. A lot of friends who come here, they go online, they go on, we have a website, CR Autos, but they buy a car when they get here so they don't have to pay exorbitant rental car prices. You can get a used car in almost any country pretty affordably, but having that ability to drive, and if you don't need to drive, awesome. If you find a cool town that you could walk and bike, that's even better. But having autonomy is huge, and especially as a couple, having a car that one person can use and get out with is really important. I had a partner who didn't feel comfortable driving locally, so it really created a rift. Like I had to take us everywhere, and if not, things got cooped up. So I think autonomy in driving and in other things you might need, internet access, whatever, just think about what you need so that you could be as autonomous as possible and not depend on other people. It's this weird thing in community where people think it means that you do shit for other people, and that's not community. So I had a friend that I had this clearing with, and whenever I'd go down to town, she'd be like, oh, could you pick up my groceries? And I'm like one day I just blew up and I was like to my fiance, I was like, why the hell does she keep asking me for stuff? I love to be of help. I love to help people with things, but I can't get her groceries every time or pick up her organic food from the market. That's not community. Like, other people doing shit for you is not community for me. Helping each other in cooperation is. What I learned is I also had to communicate my boundaries super clear, which was, hey, like, I can't really do this right now. You got to do it on your own. It actually cleared up a lot of our friendship, and it cleared up future relationships because I set my boundaries, and then I didn't have to get passive aggressive or weird. And boundaries and communication are 99% of the problems with all forms of relating to neighbors in an eco village, to your husband or wife or whatever. So I don't think there's any case where we can't grow in that ability to communicate, but especially when you start doing the whole like alternative living eco village stuff, holy crap, like, you know, instead of community being ways that I can contribute my gift, community I found was ways of people doing stuff for me and crutches. And so yeah, setting those boundaries is really nice. I also like, everyone always asks me for rides to places. My car ended up getting stinky. I was like, I don't want to give hippies rides all around Costa Rica. It doesn't make me a bad person. I just had to set some boundaries. And it took me years because I cared so much about validation and being the nice guy. I was always like nice guy Ed. And then I ended up being the nice guy who was like passive aggressive and pissed and toxic later because I'm like, I just got walked all over. You know, my car now isn't running good. I let a friend borrow it. So doing the whole alternative thing, I think, does involve a good set of boundaries and a good set of being honest with people. Sometimes they won't understand it. That's cool too. Like if someone's like, oh, I don't understand. Like, why didn't you do that for me? Like, you're so inconsiderate. It's okay. Like they have the right to think that, but at least from my side, really working in this space to communicate well. And yeah, and speak honestly with people, not push things under the rug and then talk about them at Friday night dinner. Like, oh my God, they're polyamorous. Can you believe that? Like, I can, you know, da da da. That's cool. That's fine. Talk to them about it. Like, be open about things. Share things. You could tell people, hey, like, we don't want to do the polyamory thing, or hey, like, we're all in on that. But communication is critical. And the next point here is adventure. So, I mean, it depends on your level of adventure, but I think that's the coolest part of us all looking and having this pause with the time that we're in. You know, I have friends who have had jobs that never allowed them to really do the things that they wanted, and others who have quit those jobs, others who now have the ability to work from home, and just getting in the car and going on a little road trip to nature, enjoying the beaches. For those of you who are digital nomads or work from your computer or any of that stuff without a label as well, you know, I've spent days in paradise behind a computer screen. And if it's doing work I'm passionate about, I'm like, awesome, I get to do this and hear birds chirping and see the ocean in front of me. But I'm also like, I'm going to take 3 less calls, even though they're invigorating and it's exciting and there are people who are changing the world. I'm like, nah, like I need my time. I want to go on an adventure. Also just going on solo adventures. It's been the coolest thing ever, just going on hikes and things that I don't have to do with other people. Being alone with myself, which yeah, it gets kind of scary sometimes. Then I'm like, oh no, this is what it's all about. Like feeling things, walking, going on a surf trip, going with a group of friends somewhere too. I'm like, wow, this is, you know, I've had times where I've had no money and I'm like, oh, what am I gonna do? And then my friends are like, look at your quality of life and stop complaining. Like you're having a blast. You're doing the things that people with millions of dollars come to this country to do. And so, yeah, just not forgetting about adventure, and not if it's also in the case that when I was building my retreat center and project, it's like, man, um, this takes a lot of time. So I have a friend, Diego and Carlita, who run a place called Zunia, and I'm so blown away that they, one, take their weekends off, two, go on these couples vacations every month. They're not like outrageous. They just go on a little trip somewhere and just spend time. And I have other friends who are busting their butt, 7 days a week, who are like, yeah, when I build this thing, then I'll enjoy and go on an adventure. But yeah, you're moving to another country or you're starting a new way of life. Whatever that adventure is, reading a good book in the garden or going on a hike, doing it is awesome. And it kind of flows into the next point, which is, having work or having passion or art or time to do things. I never thought that not having something to do could be a problem. And I think I grew up in a do culture in New York, but not doing anything is really tough for me, just to be and do nothing. But also I saw the opposite. I had a friend who stopped their job and found that, like they didn't have what to fill their time with. So it didn't have to be more work, which was my idea, like, ooh, if I work hard, then I'm worthy, or I deserve it if I'm working hard. But no, doing things, art, some kind of passion project, volunteering, whatever, going to the beach. But having things to do abroad is critical. And I've seen it really kind of tear up some couples where one has like this big passionate thing that they're doing and the other doesn't. And it feels really weird. So really understanding that if there's, something that your partner could do, or you could enable them in some way, like, wow, they're an artist and I haven't even thought about getting them a canvas or paint or things. Whatever it is, sometimes life can get really good when there's nothing to do. Sometimes it can get a little boring and get a little meaningless. And then that whole like, who am I? What am I doing here thing happens. And we don't want to go there because we've been there a lot. But yeah, having things to do is critical. I talk a little bit about real value: land, water, food, friends, health, safety, freedom. If we're looking for an alternative, if we're looking to usher in a new paradigm, what really matters? For me, it's friends, it's having good health, clean food, knowing that I'm safe, really safe. Not because a police force can protect me, but I feel safe. I feel safe in the neighborhood I live in. I feel safe that my girlfriend could walk at night down the street of the town that I live in, and I don't have to worry about that. And it's actually affected where a lot of my friends choose to live in Costa Rica. Certain beach towns are not as safe as we think they are in one of the safest countries in the world, but really the varying levels of safety, from physical safety to emotional safety, water and land. My friend showed me this little creek on his property, born from a spring, but he has his own water. And I've had friends who spent upwards of $1 million on properties and they don't have water. And I have a friend who just bought a little piece of land for 60K, but it's his own little creek. And to see his eyes light up, how much independence, how much safety that has him feel in a world where water could be once scarce. And still, even with his own water, how he can share that water, how he can still collect rainwater, even though he has an abundance of it. So much to look at of what has real value. What kind of land has real value? Is it plantable? Is it good soil, or is it just in a cool place? So really considering that, I think, is important, and having a clear set of values that are a north. We had at Burning Man the 10 principles, but I like creating my own values and my own principles and checking everything against it with a litmus test, because a lot of times I'll brush certain values under the table without noticing. So I keep it in my journal. I keep a values list and really look at what I'm looking for. And then when I'm in my search and in my process, I'm like, oh, okay, like I personally really want to be not that far from an airport. I need to be somewhat close because I value travel, or I like supermarket, or I like this or that. So also not feeling bad about certain values, but really seeing like what's simple or what deeper things you want to align to when in the search for your alternative, because there's always groups of friends who are going to point to this place or that place as the best place to live. but seeing if you really fit there helps, because I gave an example of Stephen Brooks earlier in Ecovia. You know, I asked him, he has an eco village that he built before his newer project, Alegria. I think there are about 60 families living there. And there was a moment where I think 10 or 15 or 20, I don't know the number, moved out. And things did this settle. So when I told you there was this like argument in the HOA, sometimes those arguments don't get fixed and people need to move out. And they're like, this shit's not for us, or this place is not for us. It's better you know that ahead of time than later. And seeing that an eco village can actually settle, that the dust can settle, that some people can move in, and you go there now, and sure, it's not perfectly harmonious, but the people who live there are happy. And so I think it's important to be honest with those values. Impact, we talked, I think, enough about, but what impact are we going to have on the planet and ourselves? I think the easiest thing to do is look at a place or project and say that's really positive, or that's impactful, or that's sustainable. But a lot of times being that change ourselves and being in integrity and actually showing up ourselves as the change, not building a retreat or a community to create change, but also exemplifying that change in the way we act and the way we use resources like water and electricity, recycling, all this stuff. I have to tell myself this stuff all the time. Like, there's so much lip service and so little walking. I'm like, there's so much more I could do to be the change versus just going out and like showing stuff. So I challenge myself, I challenge my friends to look at real impact. And, you know, one of my mentors was like, why is there this desire amongst this generation to think that they have to fix the planet and like single-handedly usher in this new paradigm? What about fixing their own lives, treating their partners better, treating their household better, their neighbors better? It really starts with that. So I'm kind of reassessing a lot of that in my own life, beyond the scale of things, of looking at, you know, how I can be in a way that's really in integrity with the things that I say and want. So yeah, and the next point is quality of life. You know, how is your quality of life? What's missing? Again, I map it. I have a bigger, I'm a kind of a crazy journaler, but I have this big journal where I map the things I want in my life. I make vision boards. You know, my dad once laughed at me about it because he's like, you do a lot of journaling, boy. But yeah, it's important. It's also important to do those things and get out of the book and into real life, but really map out the quality of life you want. The more you hone in on not only your present life, but the legacy that you want to leave, hone in on your legacy. It's critical. Oh, we're going to let in one more person. Yeah, it's really critical to see that and map it. And even if it's just like you want to retire and go live somewhere abroad, see what you want in that life, map it out and see how you could achieve it. And most importantly, the last point was do you, and trust your gut, take your time, do all this stuff super slow. The worst thing I hear is like, again, I got to another country and I just bought land on my first trip, or I have a friend who's bidding on land and has been here like 3 weeks. Like, unless you're like a real estate investor or something like that, take your time, go to a place, even if all your best friends are building a village together or part of a project, really take your time. Again, 15 years I've been in Costa Rica, and we're selling our house in the capital in Ciudad Colon. And my girlfriend and I are having, you know, weekly discussions of where we want to live. And I know this place like inside and out. And we're like, oh, do we live in Chiripo? No, we can't live up in the mountain full time yet. We're not like, you know, in that point of our lives. Do we live in this beach town? No, it's like way too much. Like, it's fun, but after a month we're exhausted. You know, okay, all of our friends are living in Tinamaste, but something, I don't know. And so again, like, even now looking at that decision, I'm like, okay, what do we want? What do I want? And yeah, do you trust your gut, take your time. If something feels off, it is. Not maybe it is, it is. My friend's like, oh, like I saw this property, but something doesn't feel right. I don't even care like what he's gonna say next. I'm like, it's not right. Like, you're gonna kick yourself in the butt, like even a year later when you're like, oh my God, you know, a healer told me the land is haunted or something. Or they found out that the land is beautiful, but because of the water springs, most of it is undevelopable or primary forest. And now they get to be real land stewards and just have a jungle they get to protect because they can't build on it, which is great, but not great for them. I'm going to move on a little bit. This was some photos of a trip to Nosara. My friend just bought a piece of land with that view that you see on the right, which was awesome. What I really like is he's far away from everything. He's in a low density area. So even though I like said, oh, okay, can't chop up land and just, you know, buy land everywhere, you can live really nice. It just don't live all on top of each other. He decided to step away from the beach by 15 minutes, and now he has cooler breezes. His land was way more affordable. He has a lot more land around him that's preserved. So he's not really creating as big of a footprint and impact as the people are who are living right on the beach and in the main part of town. Nothing wrong with that either. Look, if someone here or knows somebody who lives like that, that's cool too. It's not to point fingers. We're just saying that if you have the option and you're coming to another country with a blank slate, try to see areas that are not as densely populated, areas where the prices are low enough that you can buy more land, maybe to preserve or to farm or to donate or to do a number of things that you can do. We've had friends who have bought 1,000 hectares in Costa Rica just to preserve for wild cats to run. And it was cheap. It was like, I don't even want to say the price. I think it was like a couple bucks an acre. And you could do things like that when you're not in the hottest parts of town. And if you are, just really think about how much space you need, neighbors, and what impact already has been done. The thing is, a lot of times there's already land where the trees have been cut. And some people are like, oh, there's no trees. But I have friends who are like, wow, this is an opportunity for me to take a piece of land that was clear cut, used as a cattle pasture. Not only can I live on it, I can regenerate it. I can plant fruit trees and hardwoods and other things. That's awesome. And I was actually wrong once when I saw this New York developer buy this huge piece of land that was like 800 acres of clear cut forest. And I was like, oh my God, who buys 800 acres without a single tree? He did, because he wanted to plant a ton of trees, and he did. And he planted a ton of fruit trees. And also the part that they're developing is like minuscule. It's, 10, 15 acres. So, there is something to be said about that. He bought land in an area where it was not dense. He's actually adding to the area that he's in, providing local jobs. But there are people who are probably saying a lot of other things about what he's doing, and that's all right too. We can only do our best, but really looking at how good we can do it, and not just being better than we had it before, but being really in integrity to doing things the right way. Let's see how the next button works here. Oh, that's the back button. Yeah, so buying land, I don't want to go into the dense stuff too much because I've done this in past workshops, and you can see these slides after. You could also email me and ask me a lot of questions about this stuff. I really wanted to share more of the emotional and real deal stuff with you. But really do a good real estate search. Have someone on the ground. Like I have locals in almost every town in Costa Rica that are not realtors, like Remax and etc. Sometimes it's not bad to have a realtor. I like some of them, but having a local or someone who can scout for you versus getting land that's being taxed numerous times and has been sold to an American who's selling it to you now. Really looking for land as a local is a lot easier. Like I see people coming from abroad, even to Mexico where I worked for a while. And I'm like, whoa, this is so different. Like having spent a month in this town, I know every property, I know which ones shouldn't be developed, which ones can be, prices go way down. So take your time, get to know a country, specific areas, have someone on the ground, do really good due diligence. We've just paired up 4 friends with our lawyer and our engineers to do title searches, to check that the land is good, to check that even though the owner said that there's water, there's legal water. In Costa Rica, you might have water flowing through your property, but if there's no registered well or municipal water, you can't legally get an architect to sign off on a build. So it's more than just sometimes logical stuff. It goes deeper. And also a friend was looking at a land that he said, what do you think? Land's like this. And I'm like, look, the price is incredible, but we need an engineer to come out and see where you can actually build here, to look at the topography. one from sustainability, but also from practical perspectives. So a local topographer can cost $300-400, and before you buy a land, having them come out and tell you, hey, just so you know, you can build here, here, and here. And a lot of times people do that after they buy land. And I'm like, whoa, that's kind of crazy. Or they get into buying land and then they're rushing looking for all these resources. So ask, if you're in Costa Rica, I can hook you up, or in other countries, but it's often not like, we don't like take a commission when we send someone a lawyer. I genuinely feel happy that that person's getting good, sound legal advice so that they could make the right decision. So do really good due diligence, and get your finances in order. Look at how you want to buy the land outright. Do you want the owner to finance it? A lot of times you can pay 20, 30, 40% of the land and have owners finance the rest over years, which gives you time to use your money to build. I've also seen the opposite, where I mentioned in the beginning, in my dad's case, that crushed him. You know, he was trying to build a really good project in an eco village, and he wasn't able to stay with the monthly payments. And then all of a sudden, everyone's like, oh, you're a fraud. This is horrible. So like, you go to do this good thing and everyone's like, woo. And then all of a sudden, like, you can't keep up with your bills. And it's like, and I've seen it on personal homes. I've seen it on retreat centers and hotels where they get bank loans and they can't keep up with them. So keeping things as lean as possible, keeping things as realistic as possible, assuming that things will happen, like you'll sell land or you'll sell a few plots to people and all of a sudden the project will work, is a big assumption. In that case, it might take a little bit of thought on how to do it right. And I mentioned accountants and residency earlier, but have a good accountant so you don't have to deal with all the nonsense. It's so cheap in foreign countries. Get all your ducks in order, your companies in order, any labor you have that you work with, making sure that they're paid legally. I was sued by like a housekeeper my like 4th year in Costa Rica. Not sued, but it's like basically a denuncia, because like you have to pay like this like incredible amount when you fire somebody. It's like, I think Christine knows what I'm talking about, but it's like a month's salary, and then like you keep paying them their bonuses. And I was like, this is crazy. She was like horrible and talking on her phone all the time, and now I have to pay her to fire her. But yeah, like knowing all these things was huge. If for anyone looking into Costa Rica, if you hire somebody, even as a part-time housekeeper or gardener, you are super responsible. Like, you're beyond responsible. And a lot of times they're like, yeah, pay me in cash, don't worry. And that's been cool most of my life here. But I've had a few people, especially at the retreat center, where, you know, I literally had like one guy who was smoking crack. I'm serious, he was smoking crack. I was like, and I'm a nice guy again. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna give him one shot, you know? And then like I gave him like 1 strike, 2 strikes, 3 strikes, you know, and I had to fire him. And that sucked. I'd never fired anyone before. I had in New York, that was easy. For some reason, it was easier in New York. People were kind of used to it. But on a farm, when you have to fire an employee, you have to pay a whole shit ton of money to Social Security and different things, even if they were not legally hired, like just in cash. And if they were legally hired, there's a liquidation process. I didn't know that. I didn't think I had to deal with that. Even for a couple, if you're hiring a nanny for your kids, all that stuff can happen and often does, and really sucks. It takes time. So knowing that ahead of time, having a lawyer, having an accountant that, again, don't charge much, often can give some parts of free advice, is important. And the last part that they help with is residency. A lot of countries now are offering cool residency options. Costa Rica just added a new category called like the digital nomad residency. I think that's actually, I forget what the official name is, but basically if you work on your computer, you can qualify for this 1 year, it's not a residency actually, it's an extended visa. And then obviously applying for residency here is another process, but it's actually quite easy if you have a good person. Anyone who needs in Costa Rica, I have a really, really good residency attorney. And yeah, and they file it. And most of my friends who have stayed have gotten their residency in one of 2 ways, as by putting 60K in a bank account or as an investor. And it doesn't mean like the investor residency is 250K, but it doesn't mean you have to put it at once. If you show economic activity, you show a company, you know, that you bought something, you bought land, you can get it. So I think that's definitely important to know. And yeah, for those on the call who are looking at buying land for doing a project, a retreat center, a community, it's a whole different kit and caboodle. I mean, it really is a whole different thing. All these things that I said are double. Again, the lawyers, the accountants, the engineers, really being sure about the land, or joining. I have a lot of friends who are like, oh, we just joined this project. We're all working on it. Really be sure about the land, really be sure about the permitting, that you can do what you want. If you're moving into an eco village or a community, be sure that it has all of its ducks in order. Make sure a lawyer reads everything. Many of them you can't build in until they have certain permits. So Alegria is a great example. They were super straightforward about it. When we get this, this, and this, you can build. People bought land, and now they got those permits, and now people are going to start building. There are other projects where that doesn't happen. So be really, even if like all these people bought land and it looks super legit and it's on Instagram, be really careful when buying land in a community or buying land for a community. I'm consulting one guy right now who bought a beautiful piece of land to understand how to utilize it the best way. From sustainability, we brought on an incredible landscape design firm. CJI, the team we work with a lot on development, really does a good pre-development assessment, just so it doesn't turn into more of the same and chopping up 50 lots like my family and I had planned to pay for a bigger project. And then everyone lives in this thing and there's this thing in the middle with not a lot of common space. So look at that if you're looking to develop a project or move into one very carefully. And in terms of the sustainability and all of the regenerative living stuff, we talked about story of place, but look at the food growing potential, the water. There's a reason Stephen Brooks moved to San Mateo or Otina. It's one of the best climates for fruit trees and food growth. Also up in Chiripo, you could grow anything. I saw kale that was like enormous and the soil was so good. So that actually affects a lot of the choices in buying land. Some of it just feels good because it looks all green. But yeah, definitely consider it. And yeah, I think, by the way, in terms of consultants and people to work with, a good engineering firm, a good sustainable master planning firm for a house or a project, development advisors, permaculture and sustainability people. There's incredible consultants and advisors in every country that I've seen people wanting to move to that really can help you. But again, as we said earlier, as long as you have a clear vision, they can't paint your vision for you. And if they do, it's not going to be your vision. And you'll either be pissed or feeling kind of weird. I've even seen architects like show a couple of this like home that they're going to build. And I'm like, dude, that's your college, like that's your university thesis. That's not the home that I want to build. That's something that you've had in your renderings and you've dreamed of building for 10 years. That's cool. But, as Judge Judy said, don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. Build, if you're showing me something to build, that's one thing. If you're listening to me and you're creating a design for me based on what I've said, that's super different. So all of this stuff, yeah, if it emerges from you is really good, but yeah, definitely give it some thought. And I know we kind of ran quickly through this one, so later if there's questions about it, we could talk more. This is a piece of land where my friend bought in Santa Teresa on the left, and the couple had built their house. It's the dark structure in the middle. I love that they built a dark structure. Why? You see all these foreigners building white houses, and there's nothing wrong with that in many ways if it matches the landscape. In Mykonos, in Greece, and other countries, white can match white stones that are on the mountain. But when you live in a green jungle, and all of a sudden you point to a hill and you see a bunch of white houses there, that's kind of ugly. It's no longer a beautiful green hill. It's now a hill with these dotted gringo houses. So just the fact of like in sustainability and other things, I had a few architects say, look, it's as simple as colors. In some cases, a dark color fits. In other cases, maybe a terracotta or an earthy color. But try to make it so your house can somewhat blend into the nature. I have a friend who built like a 6-story hotel that you can't see from the ocean. and it's blended in completely. Maybe it has some other factors that aren't so sustainable. I'm like, that's cool. You look at Manuel Antonio from a boat, it's a part of Costa Rica, and you see all these like hotels and buildings and everything, and you can't see his. And I gave him a huge thumbs up for that. And so here you see their house, their swimming pool. They built a little bit of a compound. So what you don't see in the photo is these like 4 cabins that are for rent. And they live there and they manage these rental units. And it's really fun. They have a beautiful view of the ocean. And they're up on a hill that has a lot of water. And Santa Teresa just got incredible real estate boom, and everyone's like kind of down on the beach. But I love where they're at because they're far from all the people. They have water, they have a cool breeze, they have a great view. So just considering sometimes if you want to be near a cool town, just popping up on a mountain a little farther away or being in close access is really cool. And then our other friends built a beachfront hotel, which is on the right. You see the access to their beach area, and it's a property called Zunia. Arguably, I think going to be one of the more sustainable projects in Costa Rica, both as community, as a retreat center, as a thought center. Has a lot, like most of the high-priced real estate is actually going to be public art spaces. They have community buildings where artisans can actually sell goods and can have a yoga studio, can have something. So a lot of the most expensive real estate is not for foreigners to buy or for them to capitalize on. It's for the community to use. And Diego and the team of Zunia are doing an epic, epic job, and also super humble to learning. I've seen friends call them out on a lot of BS. And I've also seen Diego say, you're right, we can do that better. Versus others who are like, this is our vision. We work with the Buckminster Fuller Institute. We have to be sustainable. We're stamped this way. No, man, like you could change shit up. And also like, even in the integrating of the local part, he had a party. He invited a bunch of the people at the property and a bunch of locals. A lot of the locals who showed up brought beer. They got super drunk. And I was like, dude, integrating locals doesn't mean just like people coming and drinking beers. Tell them about your culture, that like, we don't really drink here, or that, you know, whatever. But like, you know, it was also like the catch-22 where he thought he was doing good by bringing locals. I'm there and I'm like, this is like a drunk fest, you know, that one night that we had this party. And I said, look, his intentions were super pure, but then we're like, okay, if that's going to happen, let's set something up. Let's make mocktails or even a craft cocktail or something that it doesn't have to turn into that, or tell people like, hey, if you want to come hang, you're welcome to do what you want before, but this is we're a no substance location, or this is a no substance party. We had a drug-free, alcohol-free festival at our retreat center. I know many of you are like, boring, but it was rad. It was rad for people to experiment with states of sobriety. I feel like half of my friends are like on plant medicine or psychedelics, or integrating plant medicine or psychedelics. And it's really tough to see a whole group of people be sober for a while. So I thought it was really cool that we had a festival for a week where there was no substances. And, you know, look, the dude who wanted to smoke a little joint in the afternoon, you could do that and do it on your own. But that energy of like it not being a drug fest, which was like one of the like hard parts for me in like my music festival life, and Burning Man was like so much drugs. And it was like, it was cool when we were exploring like, wow, different ways of being, and we're elevating our consciousness. A lot of it isn't that. And a lot of it creates a lot of confusing emotions for people. And believe me, like, I still think plant medicine is important. Ayahuasca changed my life, all of this, but how much of it, you know? There are places in Costa Rica where, I mean, they're just serving every week a new ceremony, and people are coming and looking for answers, and they're leaving fucking emotional and confused and splitting up with their girlfriend or boyfriend, and they're like, ah. And I'm like, dude, chill out on the mushrooms and LSD and ayahuasca and iboga and everything for a little bit. Not to say don't use it, but like, use these things with reverence. My girlfriend says, if you're not sick, you don't need medicine, you know? So if you're communing with plants, and also when you're looking at living in certain areas or starting projects, consider that. Like at our retreat center, we didn't want to be an ayahuasca center. So we limited how many, like we had a lot of people book retreats, and of course you want to make money, so you can't say no to a retreat, but sometimes we had to. Like we had some retreats that like shit got weird, and I was like, oh, then like a healer had to come and like clear the energy of the property. and they're like, oh, your property feels weird now. And I'm like, damn it, like, shouldn't have said yes to that Iboga group, like, you know, or this group or that group. Now my property has bad juju on it. And, you know, so really consider that if you're building a property or you're living in community where that's cool, like it's definitely cool, but how much of it? Or none at all. But yeah, it's something to consider. I think it's a part of this whole movement of alternatives. And again, I'm not like completely anti-plant medicine or anti any of this stuff, but I've seen what its effect in community and retreat spaces. If you're building a retreat center, it's a lot to handle. It's a lot to operate that kind of experience. And you really have to hold space and create a space for that. And then deal with the fact that you're going to have to deal with that energy. I remember I had groups even without plant medicine coming through, and we're like, man, like, I feel like all this energy just came through our space. And my wife was like at that time super pissed off, and she was like, I don't know what's going on. And I'm like, it's all these groups coming in and out. Like, we really got to feel into this. Is this what we really want? I have a friend who's dedicated to this work, who's building a center just for this, but the dude's an expert. You know, his whole life is dedicated to studying this stuff. Integration, he has Stan Groff on his board, all these people, he's worked at Esalen, he's done all this stuff. You know, he is really putting in the effort to create a space for this and knowing that it carries a weight and a toll, but that's different. That's him creating that space from a sense of purpose for that use. I have other friends who just wanted a good retreat center or a good community, and now it's a lot of plant medicine. So consider it. I think it's really something important. I think I kind of went a little bit off on that one tangent, but I think it's an important one. And I did want to say one thing also is I've used the word retreat center because it's common language. But recently a friend of mine was like, what are we retreating from? Why do all these places call themselves retreat centers? And I'm like, fuck, I have to go like change the number of workshop titles and website copy. But so true. Like, it's hard to explain the opposite of a hotel, which is a small center and education. We brought on a hotel operator for our place called Vida. And I brought Selena, a big hotel group, and they were like, this isn't a hotel. And I was like, no, this is a retreat center. They're like, how many people, like how many heads and beds do you do per night or something? Or how many hotel guests do you have? And I was like, 0. And they're like, 0? And I was like, yeah, we're an education center. We have people who come to learn. This isn't a hotel. Yeah, people sleep and pay for food and hospitality and lodging. But it was interesting because we had to have that conversation on what it was, what it wasn't, groups coming for a week at a time, hosting your own content versus inviting other teachers with their content, which is what I focused on. It was a lot better for me to create a space where a group could bring a yoga group or a group of entrepreneurs, and we created the platform and the container for them. Whereas I have other friends who produce all of their own content and bring the teachers and invite people. Mixing the two gets really tough because you don't know which one you are. And so I also tell people to really nail in what they want to do if they're building a retreat center in that regard. But again, the word retreat is such a misnomer. So we'll figure out a good one, sanctuary, something else, but I don't think we got to retreat that much. Building efficiently is our next topic. We talked about due diligence, building at a good price. I have yet to see a foreigner come to Costa Rica, Mexico, US even, and Portugal. Thinking where else? Yeah, almost everywhere I see, as somebody who builds and knows building, I'm like, wow, nobody is paying the price that they should. And some people are getting really cheap building done with its poor quality. Other people are overpaying. So understanding who's building whatever you want to build, using local materials too for those who are into eco construction, bamboo, hempcrete, aircrete, mud, I think, what is it called? Wattle and daub, cotton wattle. Anyway, look at how you can build at a really good quality, local materials like wood. In Nosara, there's people who collect fallen wood and wood that's in rivers. 1, super sustainable. You don't have to cut new trees. 2, a lot of times better priced than milled wood from like some teak farm that's like this thin. And find really good architects, construction companies, ask around. In Costa Rica, we have a couple. I usually like it to be local, but even like a company that I work with a lot, they'll hire a whole local team, but bring in a few experts who are really good at some of these sustainable practices like hempcrete and other stuff. Make sure the permits are in order. Yes, permits. Start sooner than you think on all the permitting for what you want to build. And know that you can build what you want to build, whether it's a house or an eco village, where you want to build it before you put a penny into the land. Again, people are like, "Ooh, we bought the land, now we're going to start thinking about what to build." I'm like, how are you doing that backwards? Like, you have to understand, this is my vision of what I want to build. Can I do it on this property? Yes or no? It's a pretty simple question, and a good engineer, a good team will tell you that. I wrote here, consider tiny houses. I don't know, I'm still kind of with it, but tiny houses, modular homes, building smaller. My parents were Russian, so everything was big. We need big house, everything must be solid, very strong, wall this thick. It doesn't. Like, I was at dinner the other night, and this architect was telling me about structures that don't have to last thousands of years. Like, structures can be impermanent and last 50 years, 100 years, but this concept that like everything has to be big and last forever, kind of crazy. He gave me an example in Japan where this one temple is deconstructed and rebuilt every certain amount of years, and it's been going on for like hundreds of years. That's epic. Like, it's really epic. So tiny houses are super popular. I work with 3 providers in Costa Rica, one that's in-house, others that we recommend. And they do modular homes too. The difference is it's way quicker. When we had the great pause, is what I call it. I don't refer to it as anything else, but the great pause. Yeah, I came to the head of development at the former hotel company I worked at Selena, and I said, Jack, I want to help people get on their land faster. I don't care if they're going to build a mansion, an eco village, but it's taking them years to project plan and build these, draw these plans for a big house or a community. And with a tiny house, you can get it up in 2-3 months. You could start to live on your land. You could feel your land. And so regardless of personal or type of project, I think there is something very cool in considering modular homes and earth homes and ways to build smaller for our needs. And using local materials as much as possible, local labor. It also, like, I didn't know this until recently, but when you look at woods, our engineering team actually said we want to use woods from this local area, not just for sustainability reasons, because they'll be more durable. So you go ship in an Ipa wood from Brazil or some other wood from another part of Costa Rica, it's likely not going to do as well in the area that you're building than a local wood. And you can find almost any kind of wood in an area. And so regardless of the material, stone, etc., see how local it can be for sustainability reasons and other reasons, definitely. And yeah, we talked about sovereignty, but water sovereignty, soil for food, energy sources, as much of that is available for your comfort, the better. If you're looking to create that for others, find an abundant place where you can support that and see how much you can support the environment around you as well. Water that might be for a local neighborhood, extra food that could go not just for your eco village, but maybe for the people who work around in the area. Yeah, I think it's important. And we talked about it, but do good topography for building, do good engineering work, make sure internet is there, because sometimes it might be a nightmare. If you want to be off grid, that's super cool too. But I think I've had a number of friends who are like, oh, we can't work in this eco village. And I have friends who have fiber optic in the middle of freaking nowhere. So that's rad. That's not being unsustainable because you have fiber optic internet that might allow you to do what you need or have people work from where they're at. That's a photo of a tiny house we're designing. What else? Sustainable living. Yeah. So we talked about some of this, so I'm not going to repeat it, but resiliency is a big word. We want to be resilient. We want to build neighborhoods, communities, or live in neighborhoods and communities and integrate and be resilient towards what might come. I think the world is changing super fast, and we have certain comforts that, again, I'm going to bring up my father in Russia, but he's like, man, like we fled this country and, you know, we didn't have certain things in place and it smelled off to him. And certain things that I take for granted, he had to travel completely, you know, overseas to another continent to give to our family. And then I left the US because I didn't feel resiliency there for me personally. So wherever you move, having that resilience and whatever you build, off-grid energy, water, the community, the town, the integration with the town. I think like a lot of people think, oh, if shit hits the fan, how am I going to protect my stuff? I need to build walls and I need to have a gun and this and that. No, man, like if you're not a dick to your neighbors, they're going to help you and support you. And if you really integrate with your community and the people who might work at your house or etc., then it's not this thing of like foreigner, worker, da da da. Like consider that integration and resilience, not just in what you build, but in how you commune with people. I find myself challenging certain aspects of my living in that way. So yeah, a lot of this stuff I'm saying, I also say to myself, I'm not perfect, and I'm very humble to understand that I can change every day a lot of the things that I'm doing to be more and less of this and more of footwork and action. So we talked about resources and water and protected areas, creating an example of your way of life. We talked about tiny houses, keeping it local and organic. Keeping your dollar local is huge. You could buy a banana from abroad in Costa Rica, or you could buy a banana locally, and that money stays in the country versus going out. So even think about every dollar that you spend is a choice. You're voting for something. Are you going to ship in this SIP panel home from Florida with styrofoam because it's sustainable? Or can you build something locally with a local team? And then thinking about schools and education for the next generation is huge. Teachers are definitely like missing in Costa Rica and now coming a lot. There's a lot of great teachers, but I think everyone wants to invite builders to their projects, and few people think about teachers and where they're going to live, having affordable housing for teachers, and also adult education. I'm constantly learning. I love learning cool stuff. So education isn't just like an eco village school for your kids, but what about this fun stuff for us as adults to continue learning? And then wellness and healing centers, even more so in terms of the sustainable example that they have to set and how we can set that. A lot of times they're not well themselves, so it's really hard to build a sustainable wellness center. Consider other elements like art infused in the everyday. It's not just about like building something eco or building it nice, but how can we make things beautiful? God or the creator or whoever loves beauty. So, you know, art and really integrating artists, performing art, music, sculpture, whatever. Invite artists, create those playgrounds, even for your own house. I think it's beautiful. And we mentioned animals, but don't forget the animals. If you can create a place for dogs to play, then maybe you won't have some of these issues. Public spaces. So consider spaces for animals if you are living in or creating an eco village. At Zunia, the place on the beach, it's animal free. Like me, you can come with your dog, but sometimes there's like 8 dogs and they get into this kerfuffle. So Diego's like, ooh, I got to build some kind of place that if people come for a volleyball game with their dogs could be running in a place where they're not bothering others. So I know it sounds funny, but super important. And if you're building a house, consider also that whether it's like you have some kind of fence for your dog or your dog is going out running wherever it wants, or your cat. Also because of animals and big animals. I like it because of my garden, and also I could let my dogs go, but I know they're not like rumbling with a jaguar if I haven't seen them in like 8 hours. So yeah. That's a photo of Stephen Brooks touring us last week through Alegria Village, and that's their yoga shala, yoga center. It's funny, our builders were like, I think I have like 5 different names for a yoga deck, like Yogashala, Maloka, Sacred Space. There's so many names now, but having a cool central space that could be for movement, that could be for medicine work, for whatever ceremony, could just be for chilling and stretching, or taking your wife to hang out and look at the view. I find it really awesome the more common spaces there are. This one's epic. It's made with local palm, steel frame, good local wood. So it's a pretty damn sustainable build. It has compost toilet. You see all the banana trees, permaculture. Steven's pointing to various pumping fruit trees in the photo. He's in the middle there. He always points to fruit trees and how they pump. And on the right was, I just needed to fill the space with something. So it's a photo of the beach in Nosara. It's really beautiful. But it's a really nice beach, so I wanted to show it. It's a really quiet part of the beach. Yeah, communities and neighborhoods, I think we went into. I left these, I have 2 slides on retreats and communities because there's 1 or 2 people on the call specifically looking to build those. I'll go into it now. If you want to talk more about it, we can on the Q&A and after. But I'm going to try to kind of run a little bit through this in an efficient way because we're almost at that time. And I have time, but some of you might have to go. So understand if you want to live in a community, pros and cons versus a neighborhood. Again, Ecovia and Alegria are eco villages, communities. Neighborhoods like Nosara and Chiripo are neighborhoods. Chiripo is an amazing neighborhood. You have all the eco village stuff like Waldorf School, organic gardens, but people have their own houses and their own autonomy. So there are pros and cons. So understand what you want to live in. A lot of people will really benefit from an eco village. A lot of people will run. So just know what you want. Know that there are alternatives like neighborhoods, and you're no less eco for living like that or whatever. Again, what impact is your community having? Why are you building it? There's no shortage of eco villages and healing centers being built. So if you feel called to build one, that's epic. But just understand there's like hundreds being built now. So really consider the size and scope and why your eco village needs to be in another country and taking up a part of that country. And you really have to be a phenomenal land steward to do that and have an experienced team and a really strong set of nerves. I don't care how good an eco village project is, it is tough. It is a full-time job to build an eco village or a healing center, retreat center, whatever. And it's not as easy and it's not as fun as people think in the building process. It can be, but just really having a great team is awesome for that. Exploring shared living and business models. Again, I've seen like 15 or 16 business plans for communities and centers, and a lot of them are starting to get into shared living, shared business models, shared financial models. I even created for my next company a matrix organization. I didn't like the pyramid thing that we do in the States with like a top co and all these other co's. So learning how there are different companies that can communicate and very strong agreements between them. I only recently met this guy, Kevin, who really explained this to me and a few other people. It's not easy to set up the new paradigm models of doing business. Doesn't mean we shouldn't, but there's a bridge from the old to the new. So yeah, we definitely have to have better ways of doing business and more communal and shared, but I've seen that shit fail so many times and people argue and partners get kicked out. So there has to be a bridge from the old to the new. It's not like a leap. It definitely is a process. So understanding how to bridge that gap, there's a lot of experts and a lot of information and consultants and people who can help, and also a lot of friends who are talking about that now. So reach out to me if like that's something you're looking at. And also for your own house or your own build, creating a strong, clear model of the financials will help you understand it. We talked about tiny houses. Some people want an income producing asset, like meaning they want to be somewhere for a month or two and then rent it out. Just understand who's managing that. If it's you, it's going to take a lot of energy. Even just checking in Airbnbs, that's cool. I'm going to hire a host or I'm going to have somebody local check in the guests and I have a gardener. Still a lot of stuff. Something breaks, something. happens. So we're actually operating and managing our clusters for people. But in general, it's if you want to rent something out while you travel, just consider what it takes, and and that understanding that it can provide a freedom, which I love, that you can have a house that actually is making you money somewhere while you're not using it. And then when you want it, you have this incredible thing to share with your friends and use. So a lot of people are talking to me about that. And just know the realities of it and see if that's what you really want, or if what you're really looking to do is to move and live somewhere full time, which is another side of it. Good Wi-Fi we spoke about, but so key. Good infrastructure, water, electric, sewage. I'll say it again, good sewage, roads, all of that stuff. If they promise it in the future, make sure it's on paper. If you're building one, be honest with people how long it'll take. We spoke about the keeping it cool with the tribe thing, homeowners associations, pets. Again, some of that is the reason why people live alone in neighborhoods. Some of it are the challenges of eco villages, but I think we need to grow. And I think society is moving to a better place when we can work out our issues, but understand the reality of it. Yeah, and I think we're going to go to the next slide because we spoke about families and education, health and wellness. Again, if you're building an eco village, just really think about the family as well, and think about what you can do in terms of health and wellness, access to healers and practitioners, spaces, really, really important. Yeah, that's this is the road trip I took last week. We went from Liberia with the group. I met them in Nosara. Then we went to Santa Teresa, another beach town in Costa Rica. And then back to the middle here is where Alegria and Eco Village are. And now that group is in the south, visiting Tinamaste, the beaches of Uvita and Dominical, and then the mountains of Chiripo. And I'll link back up with them. But yeah, it's really cool that they took the time to spend a month to travel all around Costa. We had a blast too. But it's something that I used to joke. I was like, oh, I used to love to tour people around Costa Rica. And my dad was like, we must build Eco Village. We need to build the future. And you're touring fucking people around the country. And I'm like, no, this is what I love to do though. And now I get to do that just because I have time when I want to create it. But it's really important for me because I got to check in with all these different projects. I got to help support people in their search for their community. And what's funny is this group of people, most of the places we visited, didn't realize that they had the capital and the intention to buy a bunch of land. But I didn't want my friends to end up pitching them land, so I didn't tell them that. So they came into these communities and projects really open-minded. They also do this incredible interpersonal work, which most of these communities need. So they also came to offer. Not just, it's kind of like the Mayans, they used to travel community to community to see where am I at the greatest service? Where are my gifts needed? Not just where I want to live. So that's a big part of it for them. They want to feel purpose. If they move somewhere, where can they be of service, not just live comfortably? So that was really cool. Healing centers and retreats. I'm going to delete that word for the next one. No more retreats. Yeah, I think we spoke about a lot of this. If someone has questions about building a retreat center specifically, I'll stay on beyond even the Q&A, but really understand that there's so many retreat centers being built right now. How big it is, what kind of business model, how it relates to any communities or projects, and getting an MVP off the ground, like just starting something small versus building these big projects. If you're moving into an area just for your own personal home to live, it's really cool when there's a good healing center, good spa, you get good body work, good massages. Even in some projects, like there are masseuses who will go to a eco village and 10 people are signed up for a massage because they know Miguel is there. And it's great. It really makes life epic. And it's not that, oh, I'm some rich person who gets a massage. Body work and healing is critical to releasing trauma and feeling good. So enjoying that as part of this future life is really nice, or present life. And yeah, hiring the right team of operators and people, and most of the other things we spoke about is critical. Whether you're operating your own home rental or you're operating a retreat center, that's what I used to do for many years, is operate and consult on operations. So I still do it. I love to do that and to help people operate their spaces, but it's really not me operating. I just make standards and hire really good teams, because it's a nightmare sometimes, and it's awesome when it goes smooth. It's really awesome when it goes well. And yeah, and having good content, having good education is really key. I think it's super important. This is a friend who just built that cabin in the middle in Nosara. And that's his house, fully open on the left. I should have asked him before putting this photo in the presentation, but he's pretty cool. But it's really awesome how open his house is. They're really living the dream. He left his like multi-million-dollar business in Canada, and well, invested all of his money into this, which is a common story here. And he has an awesome house, and they're a little bit now thinking about budget, because he's like, oh, all my money is now in this project, so I'm not going to go do the kind of jobs I did in the past. So he's building small cottages to rent. They now have to think about how to operate that little cabin, which is not as, again, easy as we think. So yeah, all of these things are common now, seeing people move, build houses, build a few extra houses so they could rent them and have something coming in. But good planning. I think they're going to have an epic project, and they're already living a good quality of life. That's their Buddha on the right, and that beautiful view. So yeah, I think that's it, and we're coming up on the hour. Oh, this is like where you could follow me, but that stuff. So yeah, I want to definitely thank you guys, and also open up for Q&A. I've been rambling for like an hour and a half, but I am going to see if I have to unmute the mics, or you could unmute yourselves if you need, I think. But thank you. And now we'll open up to any questions. Any discussion, doesn't have to be in questions. We could talk about stuff. Oh man, I should have seen the chat while I was speaking. Cool. All this good stuff in the chat. But yeah, if anyone has questions, let me know. And I'm going to see if I have to click anything to unmute y'all. Let's see. How does that work? Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, so you should be able to unmute yourselves. If anyone is having an issue, just type it in the chat. Oh, you could also ask questions in the chat, because I'm looking at it now. Sweet. Awkward silence. Be with the silence. Oh, can't unmute. Monty. Okay, I'm going to figure that out, Monty. I'm going to figure that out right now. There we go. Mute all. Allow participants to unmute themselves. Okay, you should be able to. There we go.
Hello. Go ahead. I don't know who's. Hello.
Yeah.
Edward, thank you so much for this wealth of knowledge and providing all this information. I feel like you're a beautiful book that we just can open up and discuss through your experiences. So I'm very grateful for $11. I think you should charge like $31, and half of it go to like, I don't know, some good charity. So I mean, I notice a lot of the one thing that you had mentioned, that you're kind of focused on working with building kind of these projects with 4 homes.
Yeah. Yep.
So what I was thinking for myself is more like, I don't know, I'm still trying to process all the information, either whether I'm buying land and building on the land. I was thinking more of like cabinas, like 3-4 cabinas, which are just like, I've seen it. There's one for rent in Uvita that's like perfect for me, but that's like, a pool surrounded by a jungle, 5 minutes from the beach, still very private. And it's just like very just like a bed, a nice bathroom, but tastefully done. And with just like a kitchenette just to make coffee. And it's more about, and just like a living quarters as well, that's like on the same property, but still away from those properties. I'm trying to understand and conceptualize, because like you made a good point. Like at the end of the day, you can have the biggest dream, but you have to be realistic with what you're doing and the money tied behind it, right? So how, like, based on that information, is it like, I guess a big part of it is where I want to live, right? And that's a big thing. Like Nosara is a beautiful place that I really like, but then it's like, I kind of like the idea of being 15 minutes away from Nosara, but from a business, is it realistic that tourists can come there?
Yeah. Yeah. And one, I definitely, I like the cluster. I mean, our new company it's called Nucleo. I'll put the link there, but that's what we ended up doing, because I find that it's a very easy business to manage versus like a bigger project, let's say. Also, a lot of times, like building them, you could end up living in a cabin, then deciding what you want to build and building more. That's why I love them also having kitchenettes, like you mentioned, because when everything happened with the world recently, a few of the centers that I knew that had units with kitchenettes, well, now people can stay for a month. People can stay for 3 months. Like that's epic, you know? And then, yeah, I think realistically, not being, Uvita versus Nosara, both are like hotspots for guests. But when I look on Airbnb, as long as it's not like an hour away or something, I'm pretty happy if it's in the vicinity. So I think 15, 20 minutes away from, like, let's say the center, 30 minutes even, is pretty cool. We stayed this time in Ostional when we went to Nosara, which was like a half-hour drive.
Yeah.
But I was really happy. Like we were in a really peaceful place and the demand was still there. So I think, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but there's more demand than there is supply of places to stay, because people are looking to see what it's like to visit. The only thing that I would say from from my point of view, and it kind of sucked when I showed this, like I had an investor who's like, oh, I want to build this thing for, as like an investment thing and cool. And I showed them the business model of what it looks to rent, like Airbnb style, like 2 nights, 3 nights. And then I showed them our business model, which is not the most profitable. And oh my God, when you tell somebody that like you're building something that's less profitable than it could be, they're like, crazy, like what are you smoking? But basically our profit lowered by 10%, allowing people to stay for multiple weeks, like 2-week stays, 3-week stays, month-long stays. And to me, that actually allows people to taste Uvita and Nosara, not just come for like a 2-day fling, but someone who's actually trying to live in Nosara is having a tough time renting a house for a month or two, like some of my friends, you know? So one, I think that's a service that I think is awesome to do. Two, it doesn't cost that much profit. And then you're not checking in Airbnb guests every day. Even for a personal home, it's annoying to keep checking in and out guests. So I think it makes it a lot easier too.
Yeah, you kind of scared me by saying, "Oh, you have 3, 4 places. You're going to be running your business full time." I'm like, "Shit, man. The reason why I want to go to Costa Rica is about balance. Is like build. I don't, and that's important. Like you brought up a lot of questions. It's like, what do you need as far as like being cash flow positive? And for me, I don't need a lot. I just want to live life with balance and have a little bit of a functioning cash flow positive business, and have enough that I'm good and just to live."
Yeah. I'll give you an idea too of like the actual numbers.
Yeah, because I have an idea in my head. So
yeah, so like let's say like a cabin could be 30, let's say a 400 square foot cabin can cost roughly 40K. In Costa Rica, build cost should be $1,000 a meter or 100 a square foot, maybe 120 a square foot max. In a lot of these places, like Nosara, local building companies are charging way more than that. Like, 140 and up per square foot. And so like for us to build a Nucleo compound costs me, let's say 4 units, a swimming pool, the laundry room and back of house. You need a storage, a yoga deck, What else do we include? Organic garden, little wellness stuff, sauna, etc. It's really like ends up being around 250K, like starting. Okay, I could make it a little cheaper or more expensive, but point is it's around that. And land usually costs from 100K to 350K that people are looking to build. So that business generates for us about 400K a year, 400K a year. So it's a lot healthier than the hotel business that I was in. I have a 2 to 3 year payback on my money as a person who put that money in. And obviously, like that's gross profit. So we net about half of that. So my point is in, making 300K a year, you'll pay off the cost of that compound within probably 3-4 years, let's say 4 to be more pessimistic. And even 5, like I totally forgot about business in the US, but people are like, dude, if you're like below 5 years in payback, that's unheard of. Like people are doing models of 10-year paybacks for businesses. I also like to challenge my own thinking. Don't think businesses have to have such aggressive payback, like a structure where a community or eco village is capitalized over 10 years. That's okay too. And maybe that's part of like the rush in the past world of money coming back, but also just balancing the books and knowing like what's coming in. Yeah, like I have a friend who operates that thing in Santa Teresa, a 4-unit compound, and makes about 300K every year.
Gross.
In his case, net, but yeah.
Oh, wow. So and how much would you say, like if you want like a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom on top of that land, would you add an extra like 150,000 as well to that?
I'd probably add like 120, something like that, 150. So like to give you an idea, we're building a compound in Santa Teresa that's going to end up being around 350K with everything, with one like kind of main house. It's going to be 2-bedroom, like 2 to 3, and then 4 tiny houses and the rest of the amenities. A lot of, obviously there's capital that like, I have friends who are like, oh, we don't get it, but a tiny house is 40K. So 2 of those is 80K, 4 is 160K. But okay, add in the landscaping, add in the pool. Definitely need a laundry facility and storage area, like back of house facility.
Outdoor facility. So you're thinking around like 5 to 550 US will get you. That's very reasonable.
With the land, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then, by the way, you mentioned Uvita. Land is more affordable in Uvita and Tinamaste. So we have a friend who is looking at doing a smaller build, like 2-3 tiny houses, like 2 tiny houses and a 3rd personal home on a land that will cost around 100, 125K. So it doesn't have to be such big ticket numbers, let's say. But
And
yeah.
like an acre, like it must be less than an acre then.
So yeah, that case, it's less than an acre. Most of the lands that we're looking at are 1.25 acres, like 5,000 meters, like the agricultural plots. And those, again, like I was blown away in Nosara, that could go for 350 to 400K because prices are through the roof. In Santa, also 250 to 350 for an agriculture lot. I'm saying in like a hot area, you could move a little bit away and pay less, but it's $50 a meter, where I'm seeing in Tinamaste and Uvita land, it's a lot more affordable too. And it has its ups and downs. Like, it's totally, again, if it's for a business, it's one thing. If it's for personal, you could really search and find that little nugget somewhere. But that's the prices that I started to see recently.
And how much would you say is like with 4 cabinas, would you say? I mean, I always say people be very conservative. Like how much are you like, what's your net on, would you say, on 4 cabinas, And again, I'm like you, I don't want to charge. For me, it just, I want a business. I like the long-term idea. I like the, like, I don't want stress. I want, pure vida, simple lifestyle. Like,
yeah. So I think netting, 150K, 200K is very doable.
Wow. I wasn't even close. I was thinking like a quarter of that.
Well, it depends where. In Santa Nosara, yes. In Uvita Tinamaste, a quarter of that. Definitely. It's again location, because that place that I mentioned to you in Santa Teresa, their existing business charges $250 a night, and let's say to $300 a night, and they're sold out December to July, June, July, like zero occupancy, I mean, 100% occupancy, like 0 rooms left, where it's a little harder. Like we're adjusting our business model for Uvita. It's going to be a little less, per night. It's going to be a little less revenue, maybe 100K, like you said, the way we're doing it is we're operating it for the people, paying all of the costs, all the landscaping, gardening, paying everything that has to be done, actually doing the bookings for people, listing the units. And then we're seeing that after what we take as nucleo, which is a management fee, that we're getting around 20 to 24% annual returns for people in Nosara and Santa, and probably 15 to 20 in Uvita. But because we're building a super optimized business and also as like sustainable as we can, it's the first time I'm building a small retreat center, not a big one, and it's actually way more profitable. It's cool. And the same thing we're doing for people who just want to like a home and like live that way, not for business. It's still pretty rad in terms of versus building like a massive house. Building these little cabinas and building that structure, I feel like it's one, more sustainable than a big house just plopped on a huge foundation. And two, it's a lot more flexible.
Thank you so much. I'll connect with you through email. Maybe we can get
absolutely. Happy to follow up with you on
granular. Thank you so much for that. Thanks for
what's going on, Ed?
Hey, how are you? I don't see your name. I just see comfortable. So
it's Marcos. It's Marcos. We've been exchanging emails. Yeah. It's good to see you, brother. I'm so grateful for the 15 years of trial and error that you've gone through. Because what I got from this workshop, was just pure authenticity, honesty, raw truth related to just almost like the fads, the stigmas, the stereotypes, the truths. We've been living here since January, and we were in Uvita for 3 months. We're in Nosara now for 2 months, and we're going through everything that you said. We're going through it, and to know that you exist is such a highly valued, just there's security in knowing you exist. Yeah, there's a safety.
Marcos, I was thinking, I'm like, I'm feeling all good. Now you're getting me a little. Thank you.
Yeah, well, you deserve it, because if you just think about, based on the brief that we heard about your story, from everything from the mistakes and the money and the goodness and everything, I just want to edify you, because you're saving a lot of people, just a lot of pain, really. So I just want to say thanks. Thank you for that. I acknowledge you. I acknowledge you and your family for the years of commitment to the research and the trial and error, really. So thank you. I wrote a list of certain things I wanted to talk about there. So we'll start with CR Auto. What's the website for the Costa Rican autos?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat, crautos.com.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I checked it out. So I wasn't sure if that was the correct one. Perfect. Number 2, the digital nomad, the nomadic visa. Do you know anyone that's gotten that?
No, I just saw it in the news here that it's a new type of visa, and I think it's on the internet. They're going to post new info. I don't know anyone who's applied for or gotten that. I also don't know exactly when it kicks in. I know they announced it. Maybe it's already available, but I can ask. You can ask her about that. Yeah.
I just posted a link there, so yeah, because that would be perfect for my fiance and I, and that's the latest update, I believe. So thanks for the reminder on that, because I forgot about that. Number 3 is related to how many people can get residency on a $250,000 investment.
That's a tricky one. So legally 1, but you can get it for your company, 2 people or your company. You just have to have a good lawyer who can file it. And then even filing it, they still have to approve it, you know? So yeah, more than one is possible. A lawyer, some like strict lawyers will tell you like, no, like it's only one person can get it. But I've seen specific examples where friends have gotten it for them and their spouse. I know that if it's like you and your wife, for example, if you're married, I think I would have to ask my lawyer again, but if you're married, I think it makes it a lot easier to get both people's residency. But
Okay.
yeah, definitely have
And
to
yeah, so if it's done through a company, then it would be all the people that are the owners of the company would apply under the same kind of request.
Yeah, and then again, so technically the company has to show at least 250K, but let's say if the company is investing 500K, or at least is showing that they're gonna invest 500K with an investment, I believe I said gonna, okay, going to invest 500K, even if they haven't yet, like my company doesn't have that much activity, but I still applied for it. So again, it's a really good lawyer to file it, and then it's also a little bit up to the will of the how do you call it, the immigration gods, because they've been turning away a lot of people. So it's a number of factors, but I would actually feel more comfortable. I would ask, and I could get you an answer on email about what the legal hardline rule is. Yeah.
Okay. Next up would be about Nucleo. Nasara. So what areas in Nasara have you started to build, or are you looking to build? Or is it just dependent on where I buy the land?
It's dependent on where people buy the land. And again, this whole thing, like you're saying, like, thanks for speaking truth. It's all like very new to me to like really speak from heart and truth fully. I mean, I've always done it, but not 100%. And so I actually had to say no because I didn't feel good with a certain client. And it sucked because as a Jewish kid from Brooklyn, I did the math. I was like, oh, this would have been good money. But I had to say no to the money because I didn't like the part of Nosara that they wanted to build. The areas that I have liked, and we have one friend who bought land in Esperanza on the hills there. I actually have a really good guy who still has land there that's, for me, like quality, that's not kind of some chopped up thing. So I could definitely connect you if you need, but I like Esperanza and anywhere on the hill and being off the beach. You have cool breezes, you have views. So we're starting a build for one friend in Esperanza on his house, and then a couple unit Nucleo. We'll hopefully have a couple of them in Nosara because, yeah, it's needed, I think.
It's booming,
again,
yeah.
how much it can handle because there's so much building. So, yeah.
Right, right. What's the turnaround time for an average home that you guys are building?
So the homes themselves, like we had one guy who I showed you like with the little cabins and the Buddha in the last photo. He already has most of his stuff built. It just took him a lot longer. So we'll just build 2 tiny houses for him. And it should really be a 3-month process. We'll say 6 to be safe with permitting and with everything. But in 4 months, we can get a tiny house build going. A Nucleo build is totally different. That's like building a compound. That'll likely take a year, a full year. Being really realistic with 3 months of pre-development, permitting, etc., 6 months of build, 3 extra months of buffer. The actual build will only be probably 4 months, 5 months of build. But I've learned to be extra conservative because I used to be like, yeah, that'll take 2 months, and it doesn't. So with everything, starting the planning, and when we build those, we bring on a development company that we really trust and like, but we're open to like architects and people's designs. They could actually influence that a lot, or even how much they want to participate. From my side, even though I know my builders and engineers do a great job, it's the same people building the Eco Village for Stephen Brooks. Jack is an expert. I come in and help design a lot of the stuff that relates to the operation, because a lot of places are built beautifully but poorly for operation, meaning back of house, everything, how the flow goes for the people. So we do kind of pre-development work, and then building, and then operating for people, so that it can kind of be turnkey. And even if it's like a housekeeper, a gardener, the listing, the checking in of people, I think it's just much easier to have a light staff than, I had a friend who's like, I want to run it. And I said, what part of it do you want to run? And I showed him the list of the operating tasks. And there was really like, I'm like, are you checking people in it every single time? The house, the fact that he just wanted to have his house as part of it. He didn't want to do the running around. So really, like when you look at it, I'm like, okay, you could save this and this cost by operating it. And I'll show them a very clear spreadsheet of our costs and say, if you want to take any of these away, you're welcome to, if you want to work there, but just know what it kind of entails. So yeah.
Yeah, that's something I would definitely explore, as my family is a family of builders and my father's moving down here in August. So, he would probably want to be a part of the build of it. So yeah, that's something, if that's available, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, as long, and like when I asked Jack, my building partner, in that question, like we have a guy who's a plumber who wants to handle like a lot of the plumbing, which sounds funny, but that's what he wants to do. So they'll remove that from the quote. Like he's literally bringing his own fixtures and things. So, the cool thing is like we'll show a menu of A to Z, and then if someone says, oh, I want to handle this part, as long as it's to a certain quality and it's safe and good, and architecture is a great example. People can bring their own architect and design something. So yeah, I think it's mostly just meeting with the build team and seeing what part Pops wants to do, but that's cool.
And the water, like all the thing about the water, that's all processed through you guys.
What do you
like
mean?
you find land? Is it like when we buy the land, do we have to ensure the water is on the land, or do you guys take care of that?
So both for Nucleo and both for friends just buying land, because we had a few friends who wanted to buy tiny houses but didn't have the land. So when they go, like my friend in Nosara, to buy land, I'll hook them up with our lawyer and to check everything about the land and the legal water, registered well, municipal water. And we'll also send in an engineer to understand, like, is there a water spring? What's the situation? So some of it you could see on a computer because it shows like registered well or municipal, but some of it you can't. And like this land that my friend bought showed no water. We know that there's water on the property. There's freaking waterfalls and tons of real water. But to build, you either need a registered well, a municipal water line, or what they call an asada. And they were able to show us that they have municipal water within a block from the property, the contracts for it going up, a local asada. So they had like multiple things that made me feel great. And I said, okay, like this is cool. From my lawyer's side and my side, like go ahead and buy the land. And that's a part that doesn't really cost much money. It's just me hooking him up with the right team. And even they don't charge that much for like the first legal search. I think was like $400 or $500 to check that everything's clean. Engineers are not that expensive. We do pre-development consulting where we like look at all these things for people. And again, I think we charge like $3,500 for most projects, just because it's some time to manage all those people, but not a lot. So yeah, I think it's in each case, I would like the person who is either buying land to be pretty sure about the water. Otherwise,
okay. Last question is, let's say I buy a piece of land and then one home and then, 3 tiny homes, and it's, more than 250K, but it's multiple items. Am I being billed from like the proof that I have made the investment for the purpose of applying for residency? Is it billed as this is one purchase, or is it billed separately?
Yeah, you'd want to show the whole thing, which is pretty easy, even in phases. And it's really interesting that you asked that because it's one of the benefits of buying land in a company. So my buddy who just bought land in Nosara was like, dude, thank you for your help. Like, I definitely want to start with you guys. Let me just close on this land first. And we didn't my project manager didn't charge him any money. She's just like, can I look at all your documents first and just see like what you're up to? And he bought the land in his personal name. So she was like, whoa, chill out, buy it in a company. Show that that company plans to build, 4 tiny homes, even 6 tiny homes. Show a plan for what's the maximum of what you want to do, and then apply that way. And what's interesting is on a 5,000, okay, if you buy land in an eco village or like a condominium lot, in any project that's subdivided as condos, their rules. Also buying an agriculture, like most of these 5,000 meter plots are zoned as agriculture plots, even for living, but you're only allowed one dwelling. And then you see people building multiple units because they're essentially filing for permitting as one house, and the architect will draw like cute pathways with covers, you know, showing that it's, yeah, it's one house, but it's made of 4 cabins and a pool, and nobody says that the house can't, you know, they just want to make sure it's not different families living there. It's also not very expensive or timely to change the zoning. Like in Santa Teresa, they actually have this same business there. And we're applying for basically on an agriculture lot, a nucleo. If for some reason the municipality doesn't want that, we can change the zoning of the lot within 2-3 weeks and a couple $100. I didn't know it was that affordable and easy, but it's by municipality or canton. So each municipality has its rules. Yeah, definitely want to check all that.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, I could keep going. I could keep going with questions, but
Well,
I'm gonna reach out. Yeah, I'm gonna reach out. I appreciate that. Yeah, we got to connect.
We could chat on email. I'm happy to dive deeper in, because I feel like we've been connected on email, and I'm like, now I know who he is.
Yeah, it's been almost a year now, just back and forth, and now we're finally here, and it doesn't look like we're going back to Canada, so it's
Awesome.
time to make a move on this. Yeah.
Awesome, and I'm glad you took the time.
Yeah, we totally did. Appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Sweet, thank you. Oh, I see your questions here. Awesome. That's perfect. Christina, I see your cute message there too.
Great. Believe it.
Go for it. I heard somebody speaking. And I'm going to see in the chat. Was someone trying to say something? Or
I have a question, Ed, but I don't know if somebody else was trying to come in.
by the way, I keep calling you Christina, and it's Christine. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. My friend Christina is also in here with us, so
Okay.
probably seeing all those messages. Good to see you, Ed. Thank you so much for this workshop. This is amazing. I totally agree with everything Coachable said here about you, and I'm so grateful for you. I had a couple questions just about, I guess for me, I know that I want to live in Costa Rica and go back there, and I more or less know where, somewhere around Uvita, but I'm struggling with like priorities. Like I don't know like what to prioritize because I'm not financially there yet. You know, I don't even know how it is like getting a loan over there. I am a citizen, as you know. But like, how does that all work? Like getting pre-approved? Should I be going over there and just like living in Uvita for a month just to get a feel for it first, search land? Like, I feel like I'm struggling really with like my priorities and like figuring out a budget for the project.
Where are you now, by the way?
I'm in Atlanta. So I moved back home to Atlanta where I grew up, and I've just, ever since I got back to the US, I'm like, oh, why am I here? I want to go back to Costa Rica immediately. And I was actually there, Ed, for a month in March. My grandma. So I was like, just getting all this great information from you and doing research. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to make this a reality. And I hope that I can, you know, make it in a good, like a year or two reality.
Yeah. Well, definitely. And when you come back, I'd love to meet up with you and Monty and Marcos. So definitely let me know. We could have a little hangout in Uvita or Nosara or wherever.
Oh, I love that. Yes, that would be perfect.
Yeah, it'd be fun. So I think your question was really valid. You have a benefit of being a Costa Rican that it's a lot easier to get a bank loan to do construction. So you can buy a piece of land and get a loan to build what you want to build, like a house, and it's pretty standard. As long as you want to deal with a bank loan, but it's pretty fair here, the pricing, you know. But I think the first question is the where, because you like, I guess you'll have a concept of what you want to do, like where you want to live. You want to live in a tiny house, a big house, whatever. But the where is number one, like Uvita. Number two, it's kind of hard to do a budget without. You could do a budget, like what you're willing to spend on land in a house. But land prices are changing quickly and land availability is changing quickly. So I think going and feeling into finding a good piece of land is first, and then seeing, okay, like this is the kind of land that I want. How much does it cost? How much does that leave me for a house? Planning like that carefully, a budget. There's a lot of cases again where you could even get a land financed, especially in some of the eco like projects that are happening now. I think in Uvita and Tinamaste, where you know, they know people want to put money into building a house, not to buying the dirt. So they're actually financing a lot of the land purchase, where you could put 20% down and pay over time. So I think both the land and the house can be financed as long as you have a way to pay that comfortably and it doesn't get stressful. Otherwise, it's so nice.
Because there is financing there, because I was like reaching out to some people, realtors out there, and they were like, you have to pay 100% up front. I'm like, what? I've never heard of that.
For land, normally, yes, but there's some property owners, I've met many who are like, hey, like, yeah, we could do a 2 or 3 year payment plan. It's just like in Nosara and Santa, the real estate is so hot that nobody wants to do that. Hot meaning like selling. In Uvita and other areas, I have a really nice realtor there who's like, and again, I feel like I keep meeting people who are not realtors, but realtors. Like they're really like good people. And I'm like, I like working with you. And they're like, this is Jose, and his father owned this land for 50 years and they're selling a small part of it because they want to like do this on another area. And I'm like, all right, that feels cool. So yeah, I think there's definitely ways to get land, and much easier to get construction financing. And I forgot what it was, but something like where they'll lend you, I think, half of the land's value. So if you buy like a 100K plot, they'll give you 50K to like build a house.
Oh, okay.
There's also private financing, but I don't really like that. Like there's like in Nosara, there's a guy that I know who's a good dude who will loan money just for construction and only on like really secure property. And he'll loan 50% of the property's value as a construction loan, and he charges from 8 to 12%. You know, usually I used to not really like that stuff because that's what like got my dad in trouble, is like lending money to build. But we were doing a big project for a single home. It's reasonable. You get a loan for a car, or you get financing on your house. I don't think that's crazy.
But so you think that like my priority should be first figuring out where, like maybe going there and like feeling it out, staying there for a little bit, and then looking into the budget and the bank and the loan and all that.
Yeah, figuring out the where, and then, you know, you could preset a budget, I guess, of like what you're willing to, like what you ideally want to spend and invest in both land and a house, but then looking at the reality.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Land, vision first, then land, but I think your vision-wise pretty good.
Yeah, vision-wise, I know what I want, but putting it into reality, it's been a struggle. Thank you.
No, the same boat with Sue and I. We're looking now at, you know, where we want to do this thing for ourselves. So.
Oh my gosh, I want to hear about it. Tell Sue that I say hi, and that I can't wait to see her again when I come back.
Awesome. That'll be in the couples workshop, living in an alternative future as a couple.
Love that. I'm down. I want to join. I'll pass it over to whoever else wants to ask questions. Thank you, Ed. I appreciate it.
Sweet. Thanks, Christine.
I just want to ask quickly, just a simple question. The just in case reserve fund, super important as well. You know, the most important thing I learned is that you get older, you always need that extra bit of cushion just in case shit happens in life. What would you say? 5%? 10?
No way, 10%, man. Shit happens so often and so much more than you think. Definitely 10% shit happens fund.
Of your full budget, yeah?
Yeah, well, okay, so one in construction already, like let's say like with Jack and the team I work in, they build a 10% or 15% buffer into their costs. Okay, so they'll present something, they'll be happier to be under than over. Cool. If not, they have that room to play with, or maybe throw into landscaping. But then there's like the bigger thing, which is like you build the house or the project, and there's still costs you're going to have even once somebody hands you something. So I think no matter what, having a personal 10% thing is important, and not just in crypto. Just a lot of my friends are like, oh, we're just going to sell our crypto. And I'm like, yeah, like you can. most people don't know that Costa Rica very rarely accepts cryptocurrency. Once it's cashed out, you have to cash into another asset like gold or buy an apartment and then sell it. So we actually had a situation where somebody's losing a piece of land because they can't prove source of income for the bank. Costa Rican bank doesn't want to see that that came from Bitcoin. So it's like a lot of, I don't know, this never came up in the past, but now like a lot of my friends and even myself have something in that cryptocurrency world. Just being really smart that that fluctuates. Most of my friends are like, no, man, I can't take out that 10K. It's working for me. I'm like, you have fucking 200K in crypto. And no, I can't take out a penny. It's going to be like triple in a year. So yeah, having cash, fiat, gold, whatever form of currency that is there with you, able to be used and not having to be subbed out. I have a lot of friends who are really smart with crypto and they have no problems. They're buying apartments in San Jose in Bitcoin. You know, there's actually a lot of transactions that can happen. What you can't do easily is liquidate 100K of crypto and think that a Costa Rican bank will accept it right away.
Gotcha.
And that's a whole different conversation, but I wanted to bring it up just in case somebody here is in that space.
No, that's great. Thank you so much for your knowledge. And I love that you learned a lot of the stuff from Burning Man, because the playa, you learn a lot over there. And I'd like to understand a little bit more on what you're doing. I know a little bit on, you know, a simple level, but yeah, Burning Man is a visionary, big community of a lot of smart people building this amazing land in the desert. So yeah, I've been there multiple times. So it's great that you come from that space.
It got me out here. It got me really pissed too. And my dad was like, back in the day, I would meet with these engineers and architects, and they're like, it's going to take 2 years to put the water in the electric lines and da-da-da. And I was like, man, at Burning Man, we just laid down cable. We dug a trench for the water. And I was fortunate to work with Larry and Marion.
Oh, amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, rest in peace, Larry. But they taught me mostly everything I knew about commuting and living and experiences, being part of that. And then they're like, go out in the world and build your own shit. Don't keep coming back to Burning Man. I remember it wasn't them, it was actually Will Roger. Like there was a board of 12 of them or something, and one of them was smoking a cigar on a Thursday, and I was flying out of Burning Man, and he was like, you're not going to stay for the burn? And I'm like, no, I got to go to Costa Rica. Like our project's in an important phase. It was actually collapsing at that time, our first project. And it was my ex-wife was leaving me. I was like, I gotta fucking go. I'm here like partying with people in the desert, not doing what I need to do. And he said, you know, like this is a laboratory, like go build your thing, you know, like go to Costa Rica, build your permaculture thing. And I was like, all right, cool. I feel validated, I'm out. And yeah, it's nice. A lot of those principles carried over. And I always like, I message Marion like once or twice a year thanking her, but they really taught me a lot of the best things that I've learned.
That's Larry's wife?
No, they were partners at Burning Man. A lot of people thought they were a couple. I think back in the day they had something, but they were totally separate. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, Larry seems like a special soul. I would have loved to meet him, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a good time. And Stephen Brooks also, his first community, Taco Tal, before Eco Villa and Alegria Village, it was a group of his Burning Man friends who built a very chill, like you go there, you're like, whoa, like this is like different. And it is, it's like a Burning Man camp, but now there's houses and stuff. So yeah, I think it influenced a lot of us. Even his dad went with me went to Burning Man with us, and his dad's been like 16 times. So I think I actually went with him rather, but it was really cool. I told my dad that too, thinking he would go to Burning Man. But, yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, brother. Grateful for you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for everything that you shared so far. I really appreciate your knowledge. I'm very grateful for everything you shared. There's an opportunity for me to purchase into an eco community in the Diamante Valley. It is a medicine community that I got to visit in January, and I was really happy with the vision that you did have there. Is there anything that you would suggest for us to look out for when purchasing into a community? The community is they're doing a 2-phase expansion. The first phase is happening right now, and they'll be purchasing another 51 hectares from the neighbor, which had an agriculture land with teak wood. It was the land was owned by these Dutch families that they're selling to the current eco community. And they have access to water as well as electricity. Yeah, they have good lawyers that I got to meet, accountants. Also, project manager from Canada is going there to manage the project, the new expansion.
Is it Polos, that project?
No, it's Florestral.
Oh yeah, okay. I've been there. I've been past there actually. Didn't go in. So that neighbor is a friend's project that's also in Diamante called Holos. I think Holos Village or Holos. Yeah. So I think for me that area is incredible. It's some of the coolest rivers and waterfalls and natural abundance. So no question, it's a great area. I think, yeah, I think just the question of if that community is for you or if that group is for you would be the only thing I would look at, in the sense of if everything checks out legally and, like you said, all the stuff, good lawyer, good accountant, project managers. If the project feels good, it's more about if you're going to be happy there. So like some of my best friends live there in that area. I go there a lot. And for me, I'm cool there. For my girlfriend, sometimes she's like, oh, it's a lot of plant medicine. Okay, so it's just being cool with the fact that it's a very strong, not to get woo-woo, but it's a strong energetic place. So for some people that's uplifting, for other people that's a lot of energy to handle. I think it's incredible, but it's very particular. So if you guys feel good there, I think great, but maybe did you spend a lot of time there?
I was there for 3 weeks. The current community is oriented around plant medicine as well as sound production and music production. The expansions, not necessarily, is just expanding the community, and about 40% of the new community of the new land will also be dedicated for as common areas. Right, so there will be a wood shop, to build the houses there. There will be a lot of thick wood that is reserved for the new expansion, and everyone can bring their own gifts and offerings.
I like Florestral because it exists already. That's one cool thing. Like, it's not like some new startup. So I think that's really cool. I think what you described sounds great. One thing I would try is also visiting at a different time of the year and seeing how rainy season is there. That's like the make it or break it for like us too. Like, we love Chiripo right above Tinamaste and Diamante by like 30 minutes. It's just we're really grappling with how are we going to feel there during rainy season? Like, are we cool with that? Everywhere in Costa Rica rains, but you just to feel how you feel there during that time, and also to feel into the community, like if it's the kind of people you're going to like to be with, then I would say yeah. But I also think there's a lot of opportunities in that area to live in or around neighborhoods and communities. So it's not something that's going to like disappear. So I feel like take your time with it. I could connect you also to show you like 1 or 2 other projects there that friends are doing, just to have a comparison, even if you are set on Florestral. And again, the plant medicine thing that you already know, I love plant medicine. I think it's great. Living in community with plant medicine is full-time work, energetic work. And I have friends who love it because that's the work that they do on themselves and with others. And they contribute to that work as sound healers or other things. But just knowing that, like, how that feels for you, I guess,
Yeah, as the part of the expansion, like the expansion doesn't have to be involved in the original work of Florestral.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what I enjoyed about it too. We can bring our own gifts, for the expansion alone or to support the existing Florestral. And I just thought that the land is to me it seemed affordable. It was about 33K for 750 square meters, or 44K for double that, 1,500 square meters.
Price,
yeah.
Yeah, so the pricing I don't think is an issue there. And if everything checks out, it's more of just like your personal feeling and maybe just doing a little bit of comparables before pulling the trigger.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually going to that area tomorrow or Tuesday. Well, it depends on how the car goes at the mechanic, but yeah. Yeah.
Good luck with
I'm
that.
going to go visit a friend, Ian Michael, who I have like his project on our website, but he's the one doing the Holos project there.
Mhm.
Also very strong plant medicine base, but also kind of two separate parts of the project. So very cool. And I think Florestral and his property share a river, because I've seen people walking from Florestral to the river.
Yeah, it's the Diamante River. That
It's the
goes-
best. I mean, it's the best. I've been all around the country. There's no river and waterfall like that.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it is beautiful. And the new, the phase 2 expansion, they have a big waterfall to a 50-meter waterfall. The intention there is to put to divert part of it at the end, to put a generator to power the whole community. So, yeah.
It's really cool. I'm so happy they're doing such a nice project. I want to learn more about that one too. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of other communities too that visit each other there. So there's a lot of beautiful people supporting each other. The permaculturists from Fuente Verde come and support, and yeah.
Yeah, and the Tinamaste Feria, you see the whole, that's by the way, like one of the cooler areas where I see communities communing together, kind of like Burning Man where people have their camps, but you know, you mentioned Florestral, Fuente Verde, there's so many others, and there's somebody working on a project to bridge a lot of them together, which is great, but just going to the organic market, you see the bridge.
Yeah.
Meet people, it's really lovely, yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing, like you mentioned, is the rainy season. Not sure how it's going to be. With the roads going down there, you definitely need a car as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some friends have actually said like, oh, because I have friends who live in Chirpo and Tinamaste and who don't want to live on the beach in Uvita, but want to go and have like a cabin to rent for the weekend or something. So I think there are ways to live in the mountains and enjoy the beach too.
Yeah.
Or use the rainy season to travel a little.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm intending as well. Yeah, and they already have fiber optics there on the land, so I don't think it would be a challenge to to extend that. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate your time and sharing. Looking forward to connecting to hear about Nucleo as well.
Thank you. Yeah, keep me posted on your project and how everything goes there, and happy to help in any way.
Will do. Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
I think you guys have my email, but I'll put it here just in case. Yeah, I'm pretty chill on email. I'm not like a big shot or whatever. Except freaking going back to Burning Man, some girl from my Burning Man camp like interviewed me a year ago on stuff that was completely like not accurate anymore because like life changes. And then I didn't realize that like people don't write things as you speak it. And I thought it was going into some San Francisco newspaper. And she calls me like a couple months ago and she's like, it's going to be published tomorrow. I need to fact check this. Everything was wrong, like completely wrong. And it ended up in the New York Times. Okay. And like the one thing the quote said was like something about how like I have birds in the background of my Zoom calls and a few other things. But like then the email got like slammed with all these people like, what do? Do you sell tiny houses? Do you sell land? Do you sell nuclear? I was like, I sell nothing. Leave me alone. Shut down computer. Couldn't even handle all the like emails. And then they stopped. So I was like, oof, cool. But it was interesting thing. But yeah, I'm pretty readily accessible by email, like, especially if something came up the next day or you guys have some questions or I mentioned something like a lawyer or contact, let me know. I can do intros gladly.
I got a quick question about, you mentioned that the real estate prices are changing pretty quickly, particularly for like Tinamaste is just a Punta Arenas province. Have you noticed any particular trends that we should be on the lookout for?
Mostly I was seeing them change drastically in Nosara and Santa Teresa. Like people even in real estate were like, this is berserk. Like this is like whatever the words are, bubble or too fast or too expensive. In general, like a lot of land just is disappearing because foreigners are coming and buying land because of all the stuff that's happening. I find it a lot more chill in Tinamaste and Uvita and stuff. I still see, I connected a friend to an awesome realtor and sent me a list of properties, like huge list compared to like Santa Teresa where it's like, And then I'm like emailing and it disappears. So I think it's pretty chill still.
Okay, cool. Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have tons of questions, but I'll email them to you because my English is not so good. I'm in
Okay.
Dominican Republic,
All right.
and I'm in a group that we are kind of trying to do an eco village. So I have so many stuff to ask.
Go for it. Oh, there you go.
No, it's just
Yeah.
that I'll send an email. It's better.
Oh, okay. Surely, surely. Yeah. And I'm happy to answer and even jump on a call, but love eco villages. And I love that it's in Dominican Republic. I haven't heard of, I hear them in certain places, but I'm happy you're doing one there.
Yeah, we are in the process.
Awesome.
Ed, what do you think about Uvita? I hear like there's still, it's pretty small town. There's it's growing still. It's not developed like Nosara. There's not like a big grocery store.
Yeah.
What do you think of like the future of Uvita? I mean, I like I've been doing a little bit of research. I know a Canadian couple that like went to buy land, and it's a good cook over there, and that's building like a space with like a yoga retreat and like kind of a small little restaurant. But then my friend that's been living there for like a year and a half, he's like, it feels small, you know? There's certain things that certain other places doesn't have to offer based on that.
It's I guess it's true. Both things are true in the sense that for me, let's start with the positive. I think it's awesome that it's not overdeveloped. I personally am like even thinking about that area because between Uvita, Tinamaste, and Chiripo, I have a lot of my friends. The ones who aren't in Nosara and Santa, they're in that belt.
Yeah.
2, there's a lot more land. It connects to the Osa. It like opens up to the gateway of the most like lush part of Costa Rica. And it has a huge future. I think there's life projects, schools, other things starting there, eco villages like Yakumama and others popping up. I have friends who just built like nice homes there. And yeah, the only downside is what you said is, okay, it might feel a little bit small. Like I took my parents there and they're like, where is the town? There's one supermarket and a few restaurants. And I'm like, yeah, whereas Santa and Nosara, some people say the opposite. They're like, oh my God, there's all these restaurants, it's overbuilt. But you know, the cool thing is when we lived in Santa Teresa 3 months last summer, man, it was fun. Like we had so many friends, we got to meet up with so many people. And then we're like, okay, but we spent most of our time in our cabin on a hill. So did it matter so much? You know, like who are you really gonna go see if it's a couple friends? Yeah, it was less of that like feeling of like going out to a restaurant and seeing everybody. And it's funny because even Nosara, sometimes I find people very spread out and not meeting up as much. Maybe it's because the times that we're in or whatever. So for Uvita, I felt that like it's still young and underdeveloped in a good way. Because if it's too late and it's overdeveloped, then prices are crazy and things are. But in general, it's more spread out. Dominical, Uvita, Hochal.
Yeah.
So being cool with that and being cool with kind of a quieter life there and meeting up with a few friends. Then again, we still had like potlucks and ecstatic dances. And I don't even know how that's like possible with what's going on, but we still went. We're like, whatever, let's go to the ecstatic dance. You know, just like, don't touch the sweaty person in front of me. But yeah, I think that's the plus and the minus there. It gets a little bit, when you connect it to Tinamaste, like where Dan was saying in like that whole area, and you go to the organic market, oh man, then you feel community. You're like, cool, like we're in one region of the southern zone. So I guess it does have its plus or minuses, and it's hard because like we liked it because it's a straight highway from the capital. I don't have to cross over to Nosara, Santa Teresa on one hand. On the other hand, like there are things I love about those parts. So it's it's so hard to compare for me. The only things that I liked was the easy highway to San Jose was like an extra plus. The amount of space, the land prices, and then my extended community. And then we went to a restaurant called Scala, which was like some fancy Los Angeles looking restaurant on the cliff. And not to say that like that's the kind of stuff I like, but it actually was funny. Like it made my girlfriend and I feel like rather unjungly. Like we felt like civilized for a second. We're like, oh, like maybe I should change from my swing trunks into sweatpants or something, you know? Like it felt like, yeah, we were like, oh, this like feels like nice, like upscale, like good, like. So there's some cool things happening there where I'm like, huh. And I went to a friend's house who built like his dream house, and I was like, whoa, I could live like this fucking anywhere in Costa Rica. Like this is great. Like huge house, like beautiful, not like enormous, but it's just like the way it was laid out overlooking the ocean on a cliff with cool breezes. The one thing I will say there is I feel like when I'm very low, it gets swampy. And when you go up on that ridge from Dominical, Uvita, and onward, it's amazing. And just over that ridge is actually Tinamaste if they fix the road in one part. And you can get right to Diamante Valley. It's just a treacherous road right now. Yeah, being up on that ridge is cool. But yeah, it has its plus and its minus. Like I have a lot of friends who like that big nature and lack of other humans and close vicinity I'm in.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks, brother.
Yeah, the only one thing I didn't know about is safety, like security.
Yeah.
So this is weird. I usually don't talk about this stuff, but yeah, Costa Rica is like the safe ass country that has like petty theft and unsafe shit happening. So there in Uvita, when we stayed on that one road where all the houses are, oh, Christina had to go. I saw she waved. Yeah, when we stayed on that road, I got locked out of my Airbnb, of my room in the Airbnb. And I noticed that like, I went to go look at the door where the latch was to see if it was like an easy thing. And there were like a ton of knife marks, meaning people had like tried to break in. So I asked a buddy who's a local American, but local for like 20 years there. And he was like, yeah, dude, you do not want to be living like where all those like Americans live in that one strip. It's not like anything bad, like huge happens, but petty theft does, especially when you're out. And that's for me pretty like uncomfortable. So, and then I was like, where do you live? And he's like, dude, we live in Uvita, just like off, like up in the hill there, like totally safe. Same in Dominical and other areas, totally safe. But when you live in these like very populated vacation rental home streets, those can have some break-in risk. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Good to know.
Yeah, which is uncomfortable, but I figured I'd say it. I'm like, oh, I'm usually such like a pro Costa Rica dude, but yeah.
Say it how it is, right? You got to be real about everything, right?
Ed, is that where you are like the majority of the time in Uvita?
No, I mean, we live in Ciudad Colón. I somehow always live
really? That's where I used to live.
Oh yeah, it's lovely here. It's like
nice.
Mountain. It's close. We're actually thinking if we could live near, because our property Vida is in Miramar. So I was like, oh, maybe we're gonna live in. I can't live in an eco village. Like I love Steven, and I wanted to consider living in Alegria, but living near him is really fun for me because he's one of my besties. So maybe living in that area, and he's doing a bunch of other projects that are less, that are more spread out there. Then we could be close to Vita and Santa Teresa. But yeah, I don't think I can live full time. Like I would love to live in Santa or Nosara, like and have a home I could go to. But just because of my work and my life, I think Uvita in that area is very practical for us to live in. We do spend a lot of time there, but I would say equal between like Uvita, Santa, Nosara. Where I really find myself a lot is Chiripo. I'm in love with the mountain.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's just epic. And my friend was like, you want to live in a place where you don't need climate control. And
right.
Like, oh. But I feel like I'm not ready to go live up in the mountain, like in the monastery. I need to be in the world a little longer.
Away from everybody else.
I would love to just garden and like, they have good internet so I could do these workshops and maybe sell my produce or find another line of work that I don't have to leave the mountain. But
I was gonna say, line of work for you, you should totally consult. I was gonna ask you if you do that on like when people are asking all these questions and people reaching out like from the New York Times, you should be consulting, and this is amazing.
We do, yeah. That's so we have like a small company. I actually enjoy the consulting more than everything else.
Yeah.
I help people. I know that nobody's going to be mad. Like, I don't like your tiny house, you know. So we started selling tiny houses, then realizing that wasn't a solution. And we still offer people that, but I'm like, ooh, what they really need is first to find land and learn how to develop it. So most of the work I do is consulting. Like I love it a lot. But now with Nucleo, it's I realize there's something missing, which is like these places for people to stay. So having like a few small properties like that we get to operate for other people would be rad. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. But I enjoy the consulting so much. And then like, don't tell people, but all the shit that I charge them money for is usually like what I just told you about, but a lot deeper. We didn't go in and do the work.
Right. Deeper and more in depth.
Yeah, but then it's actually getting it done, and it's also managing the lawyer and the accountant and all those people, telling them what questions to ask. You know, it's really fun for
It's
me.
like holding their hand through it.
Yeah, and also, you know, I think it's holding their hand, also like dealing with like this permit came back like this. Now I have to go back to the person. To, you know, I just like to handle it for them.
Right.
But yeah, I enjoy that. It's the one part that I'm like, ooh, I could share this, and it feels an integrity.
Oh, awesome. Well, I'm so excited for you. I want to look more into Nucleo, and thank you so much. I'm going to have to head out, but I appreciate you, Ed, and I'll definitely reach out when I go back to Costa Rica, hopefully soon.
Please do, Christine.
Thank
Please
you.
do.
Appreciate it. We'll connect
Appreciate
later. Bye, everyone.
And Roberto, I'll definitely look out for your email. And I feel like you have a lot of questions, so I could even do a little call with you if you need or something. I feel like it's definitely something I didn't want to cut you off on the time for, but if you have any now, you're welcome to, or we go by email and we do it.
You're telling me?
Yeah.
My biggest worry is that because now that you have mentioned, as I saw, that you have eco village, you have neighborhoods, you have communities, it's all different stuff. We are thinking about maybe co-housing, but I believe the co-housing is almost the same as eco village as you have there in Costa Rica, because eco villages in Spain, for example, is completely different.
Yeah,
it's more community. So it's just that I'm thinking more confused.
Yeah, no, it's great. And by the way, what's even more confusing is I met with a buddy and great mentor, Chip Conley, who has this like hotels, beautiful hotel. He also is the head of innovation or strategy for Airbnb. I don't know. He's a really smart guy. And we talked about how all of this stuff is blending. Hospitality, real estate, co-living, co-housing, you know, one project having multiple offerings from co-living to this and that. So yeah, I think it is really confusing. The simpler we can make it, the better.
The problem is how to make it legally everything together, because it's very difficult to manage.
Yeah, or not, because you make a good point. If it's really difficult legally, maybe there's a way to simplify it and just choose and focus and then do phase 2 and phase 3 and see. But yeah, I think it's good to really think and consider and then organize. I don't know the laws there in the Dominican Republic well, but yeah, it's definitely, even without considering where it is, the things that you mentioned are really tough things to consider.
Yes, that's the biggest point. Now we are a group of 15, but we were 21. Now we are getting narrower, less people, because we are getting all the points, all the issues, and now most people are going out of the project also because of that. Also because it's just that when you say, okay, now we're gonna have baño seco. I don't know how to say that in English.
Yeah, composter.
Yeah, composter. So people say, I don't want that.
That's the hardest part, the people part. But I'll tell you what, the more people say I don't want that, the easier your job is, because then you find the people who are clear on what they want, and you do maybe a smaller project but together. So I think it's going to guide you.
Yeah, it takes time. It takes time. That's what happens. It takes time. And I'm grateful that you mentioned that, because nothing can be rushed. You have to take your time to do things right.
It took us, 100 years or longer to get into this paradigm of living, and now we all want to shift it. So, yeah, we got to be easy on ourselves too.
Yes.
Yeah, and you went from
Excellent.
living the fastest paced life in New York in the world to Pura Vida Costa Rican time. So that's a huge shift, right?
Yeah, and then I didn't allow myself to shift. I came here, and because in the Russian culture, like
I'm
your
Russian too, by the way, and
oh,
so is Dan, by the way.
no way, really?
Yeah, I'm Russian Israeli, and Dan, I mean, Dan for sure speaks Russian. I
I'm
understand.
Romanian. Close.
Wow.
Do you speak Russian, Dan?
No, I'm Romanian.
I always thought
My
Russian.
business partner is Romanian. There's this weird Romanian thing happening where all of a sudden I have like 10 Romanians around me, and I'm like, what's happening, Romania? But yeah, it was like I ended up realizing like how easy it is to do New York paced life in Costa Rica. I was like, I gotta work harder. Like, is this
Slow down. People are like, you're going too quick. Like, what is going on? You're like, I'm from New York, man. This is how it.
no, gotta chill too. Gotta enjoy the process.
Just a quick question with the whole, like, I mean, I really like the whole, you just need to invest 250. So like, you know, I just have to really create a corporation and do the legalities behind it and set up a business. And how quickly can you get permanent residency? You just have to show that, like, it's just to show me the money and have all the legal things in place, and or do you need to have like a plan and budgets and a business plan?
No. Well, one, they're reopening the immigration offices now, or whatever they call it. They were closed for a bit. You don't. It's really tricky on that. You could apply very quickly, like within a month, 2 months, whatever amount of time a lawyer puts together. She tells you what you need. You need to
Sure.
show this, this, and this.
Sure.
Great, you put it together. The question is then how long it lasts, because some people get approved in 6 months, others in 2 years. You know. What's cool is I actually didn't care. I've had my residency in process for a while, and it's a dream because they grant you like, innocent until proven guilty, like in court. So you get almost all the benefits of residency while you're only in process of it. You don't have to leave the country.
That's what I was gonna ask, because I was like, man, it's so annoying. Like, I know people that are just and then you have to pay attention to when the 3 months comes up, and then you gotta leave and do a visa run, and it's just like, so that's awesome and it kind of makes sense. Like, if you're bringing money into their space and they need time to create your visa, like they shouldn't get you to do a visa run. Like, it's just like, they know that this is what you want to do. This is how long it takes. But you hear it, like, you think it like a year, or, I mean, you've been there years and you still don't have it. Is that what you're telling me?
No, I purposefully didn't. I got mine installed on purpose because then you have to start paying Social Security and a few things. I don't know. It's like $100 or $200 a month, but I was like, I don't need it, and I'm traveling. When this whole thing happened, lockdown, I was like, okay, I'm getting my freaking residency in order ASAP. So I don't recommend taking the path that I took because I was kind of lazy about it. I was like, oh, if I could enjoy the benefits of residency without paying the monthly thing, this is great. But no, most of my friends have gotten it in 6, 8 months, a year, not that long.
Great. And I'm really curious to talk to your accountants and about the how to be creative with your taxes over there. That's super important.
Susan's amazing. So my accountant does like US and Costa Rican tax, and she's really sweet and like super affordable. So she helps me figure stuff out. And it's mostly just so you get the idea of it. It's as a US citizen, you're a US citizen?
Canadian.
So you're also taxed on income abroad?
I have no clue. I will be honest.
Well, basically the point is like you have a company that makes
I would think I would be, like, I mean, but I don't know how I'm taxed, I don't know, because we're in a different currency. So I don't know how that would work.
Yeah, it's just basically keeping the income that you make in a company and taking out what you need for yourself to live and paying taxes on that. But your company could make a lot of money, but Monty only took out 100K or invested a certain amount into real estate after that. And there's a lot of cool and simple things you could do. Costa Rica and the US have a tax treaty. We also have like 150K exemption with the US of foreign earned income. So they could look on the computer and see what cool stuff exists with Canada. But I think you should be pretty straight.
Wow. So hold on, you're exempt for 150 every year if you make that.
Yeah. Yeah, 100 US, we have 150K foreign earned income tax exclusion if you live 180 days or more abroad.
So what do you pay to Costa Rica? I mean, I want to give them my money too.
Yeah. Well, I like to pay Costa Rica my money because they don't have an army. I have my own reasons why I don't like paying US taxes. It's not that I'm like against the US, I just see where that money goes. So in Costa Rica, you do pay your tax. You pay your corporate income tax. Man, like even in our Nucleo spreadsheet, like our friends like got kind of mad. They're like, oh my God, all these taxes go out, you know, employees. But yeah, you pay 13% sales tax here, you know, plus your corporate income tax, maybe another 10. So you are paying a healthy tax still to Costa Rica, but it's not like the US, which is crazy.
Yeah, US is, yeah. And in Canada, it's the same thing. Like you make like 100 plus, you're paying like 40+%.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're making 150, it's like 50%. So it's a lot. It's probably what, half that in Costa Rica, right?
Yeah, it ends up being like 23% for like what we looked at one of our companies, that maybe a little more, 28 depending on the bracket.
Plus in Canadian, there's ways that I can even get more creative to have a little bit of a business here. I get paid in American, which is worth more. There's, you know, it's just a matter of like using money, shifting money around. And again, like, you know, that's, I find like paying a good accountant is well worth it.
Yeah, and having a simple tax structure, not like an overly complicated. Like my friend has something with Bermuda and this and that, and I'm like, dude, how do you? And I'll bring up my dad again. I was like, Dad, my friend has the best offshore tax structure, and my dad was like, how do you know? Has he ever been audited? And I'm like, no. And he's like, then I don't know if it's the best. It might be. And I'm like, damn it, Dad. But he's like, keep it simple. Keep money moving, keep it in your business, keep it investing, use very little. And I'm like, okay, I guess this less tax theory, more like practicality of like, how much do you need to live on and keeping the rest in flow. Yeah.
I already like you because I imitate my parents a lot too about how they speak with their accent. So it's funny. There's some kind of, I do it all the time. Amazing.
My dad's gonna be like, boy, I'm gonna kick your ass. I heard your workshop online.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a true blessing. I'm very, very grateful for, you know, this wealth of knowledge and this time. And thank you, Dan, so much for having a great conversation and connecting me with this amazing workshop. It's inspiring, it's motivating, it's real, and it's possible.
Thank you, Monty, and thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Roberto.
Thank you, Edward.
Thank you for being
Good touch.
here.
Thank you, guys.
You guys all have a beautiful night. I'll probably send you an email maybe to connect that at some point to have like maybe a little bit more of a granular in-depth chat about once I have some things lined up and some ideas.
Yeah, awesome. And Daniel, same. Same any questions that come up around Tinamaste and the project. Happy to connect. And yeah, happy you guys are in Costa Rica.
Good.
Dan, you have a website for Nucleo?
Man, it's like that place that he was like, Ed was like, man, that place is special. It's the best river in Costa Rica. Like, that's fucking amazing. You know, Costa Rica is a beautiful place. When you hear good things from the locals there that have been there, like, that's got to be awesome too. It's got to be a great feeling.
It's so tough. I can never be truly like, everyone's like, well, what's your favorite? And I'm like, oh my God, like, I don't know. Like compared to Tinamaste and Chiripo and you know, what's his name? Marcos and Nosara, you know, it's all like stunning. It's just where you feel good. So.
Yeah.
Sweet, guys. I'm
You
gonna
have
go
a good
evening.
You too. Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
Yeah.